Good evening. I'm Mayor Dean Brookie, and I'd like to invite you to the July 21st meeting of the Durango City Council. We have a very full agenda with a lot of interesting topics this evening, so we'll start out with a roll call, please.
Councillor Bettine?
Here.
Councillor Noseworthy?
Present.
Councillor Youssef? Mayor Pro Tem Baxter?
Present.
And Mayor Brookie?
Here. Thank you so much. With that, I'd like to ask if anybody has please identify any actual or perceived conflicts of interest this evening. And I'll start out with, I would like to recuse myself from item 9.2.3. For the record, those are past clients of mine, and I'll recuse myself. Anybody else? All right. That said, we can move on. Oh, yes, Councillor Bettine.
You're on mute, Chris.
I'm sorry. Item 9.2.2, the Waymeyer item on the agenda. I will recuse myself from that. We have a personal relationship.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Bettine. Any others? Hearing none, we'll move on to the public participation portion of our project, or of our meeting. And public participation is meant for anybody that would like to say anything to council or the public regarding any items that are not further agendized on tonight's meeting. To keep the meeting moving along, we are limiting comments to 3 minutes. In our new virtual format, you will be muted once you reach that limit, 3 minutes that is, you will be terminated. But to be able to join the public participation, please raise your hand in the raise hand function if you're using the Zoom app to indicate that you would like to provide a comment. And if you called into tonight's meeting using your phone, please press *9 to raise your hand, and our moderator will announce the next person to speak and will unmute you at that time. Please be advised that this is a live television broadcast, and your video camera will show up when you speak, or if you're calling using your telephone, your phone number will be displayed. With that, can we have our first participant?
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mitchell Carter. I will be your moderator this evening. We do have a few attendees, but no one has raised their hand yet. So if anybody is in the attendee list who is here for public participation, please use the raise hand function in Zoom. And if you called in, press *9 and I can unmute you.
I do believe also we have one comment that shall be read into the record by our city manager, interim city manager.
I do not see anybody in the attendees list raising their hand. So if we want to read that comment.
Okay, can we get that comment read into the record?
Yes, I'll pull it up. Okay. This is a comment from John Viner, 399 West Park Avenue. Please add to the agenda an item on social distances / practical actions that can be taken. 2 actions the council can take to increase social distancing in Durango are: 1, bump outs on Main Avenue. Eliminate choke points on sidewalks and all places with close contact to those who are sitting to eat or drink. 2, add large signs to entrances to the Animas River Trail. Bump outs. Direct staff to videotape or take a series of photos of downtown sidewalks to examine the furniture added to the sidewalks after the bump outs were created. Review the photos or videotape taken at the next council meeting and take action by an amended city order. Choke points have been created on these sidewalks. Chairs and tables have been added. In some cases, it's impossible to avoid having your face less than 3 feet from the face of someone eating or drinking. Crowded streets with many pedestrians not wearing masks add to the problem by preventing to quickly walk by. These obvious major COVID hazards can be reduced by an amended city order. Also, take a hard look about allowing tent signs and other portable furniture on the sidewalk. In my view, all furniture added to the sidewalk since the bump outs in this area should be removed immediately. Require chairs and tables on bump outs on the street to be at least 3 feet from the curb, and consider forbidding sitting on the outside tables next to the wall at Carver's and any other establishments with permanent seating. Signs at the ART entrances. Add large signs to all entrances of the ART and at the skate park regarding social distancing. Fund these improvements by using dedicated park and recreational funds. Please add to the agenda of this meeting an action item to discuss practical changes that will reduce COVID risk on downtown Main Ave and the Animas River Trail. Thank you, John Biner.
Thank you, Amber. Appreciate that, and we'll make sure that gets to the COVID response group as well as on the public record. Our next section of the meeting is proclamations and presentations, and we have a series of updates. The first being 5.1, the Visit Durango update by Rachel Brown. Thanks for being with us tonight, Rachel, and look forward to having your update.
Thank you, Mayor Brookie, and good evening, councilors. Thank you to Amber Blake for inviting Visit Durango to give this presentation this evening. We are happy to share the latest and greatest with you. And let me just put this in presentation view. So this evening, we'll just be giving you a brief update on Visit Durango. And then the major request for this presentation was to get into all the data that Visit Durango collects, which has been a good exercise because putting it all together in one place made me realize the massive quantity of data that we do collect. And for that reason, I have sent the councilors and the city manager a larger version of this report. It's about 60 pages. Obviously, we have a busy agenda tonight, so I will be presenting a much abbreviated version of that to you moving forward. So first off, our Visit Durango update. We are now Visit Durango. That is our nonprofit's name. You've heard us referred to as DATO, DACRA, a number of acronyms, and we are moving away from those and sticking with one consistent name for both B2B and B2C. So we are Visit Durango, but keep in mind that, of course, we still market the entire La Plata County region, not just the city of Durango. A quick look at our org chart from last year. When I came in, one of the major things that I did was bring a number of our contract services in-house to be more efficient. We brought PR contractor, ad agency, graphic design, etc. in-house, and we are spending less on those roles, but more on advertising. So it was an efficiency that was needed, and it was also great timing that we did this right before COVID hit, because obviously we need to be more efficient now than ever. If you've read my tourism effect column, you've heard me talk or write at length about destination management. We are no longer just a destination marketing organization, although that is the core of what we do. And what destination management means in the simplest of terms is destination marketing, destination leadership, community partnerships, and stewardship of the destination. To give you a few examples, destination leadership. So we advocate on a national and local level for things like PPP, Colorado Tourism Office funding, Colorado Creative Industries funding, etc., and participate in a number of task forces such as the Economic Recovery Task Force, as well as are heavily involved in the Lodgers Tax Initiative. Just some of our community partnerships. Apologies if I forgot anyone, I'm sure I did, but these are some of our local, domestic, and global partnerships that we work with. And stewardship, we're very excited about this one, and it is perfect timing. Responsible tourism is now what it's called. It's no longer just focused on sustainability, it's also health and safety focused. So we recently conducted a resident survey, which I'll get into some more results from that later. But one of the major questions that we asked was, what are the major pain points of visitation that you would like us to focus on with our responsible tourism campaign? So is it fire safety? Is it leave no trace? Is it backcountry recreating? Is it driving etiquette? And these were the 5 that rose to the top, and for good reason. We agreed that they were, the major areas that needed to be focused on. So not only are we using this as an opportunity to encourage people to wear masks and social distance, but we're also educating them on these other principles as well. And people can go to our website at Care for Durango, and they can sign up for a pledge. So they can pledge to follow these principles when visiting Durango, and they can enter sweepstakes for a getaway to Durango. And as you all know, one of the major partnership projects that we've worked with the city on is the banners. We have a Enjoy Durango Responsibly banner up on Main, and we are in the process of creating some more, as well as the posters you see on the right and some other collateral that we will be distributing throughout town. This is a video. I apologize if it's a bit buggy. It's a bit buggy in the presentation, but hopefully you could hear that.
Durango's always been a place of adventure, full of sunshine, trails, cool water, laughs, and long walks. Let's face it, this hasn't been an ordinary summer. But like a rainy day in Durango, we're making the best of it. We're working hard to keep you and our community safe. We ask you to do the same. Be kind, wear your mask, and let's take care of Durango together.
So I think that's just a great example of, you don't need a fancy camera and an expensive ad agency to produce some beautiful, powerful content, and just love what our marketing team is creating these days. Now I'll get into the data portion of the presentation. First up, we have just general visitation data. Keep in mind, these are estimates with this overnight visitation. These are the equations on how we estimate overnight visitation. And so for 2019, we estimate Durango had about 1.7 million overnight visitors. And then in this year, January through May, so year to date, we did a comparison of 2019 to 2020, and we included both hotels and vacation rentals, since obviously both are very important. And actually, we are only down year over year for that portion by 11% for overnight visitation. I believe the reason for that is that the vacation rental number of people has actually increased, and that could be due to what Clyde Church, County Commissioner, coined as COVID refugees, people looking for more remote rural areas to wait out and possibly be in a vacation rental instead of a crowded urban environment. On the left, you'll see US occupancy year over year. That dropped to this year down by about 23%, whereas in Durango, we only dropped by about 18%. So we are faring better than your average US destination. We've also been tracking the monthly lodgers tax collections for the city. You can see on the right, we have the predicted percentage drop that we expected for that lodgers tax collection. And then on the column to the left of that, for the actuals, you can see what those numbers actually came in at. March and April were a bit lower than we expected, but May and June seem to be a bit higher. So we hope that that trend will continue for the rest of the year. And we do expect at this point to be down by about 45% for the year. Our occupancy in comparison to other Colorado destinations, We are in the 4th out of 12 destinations, the 4th lowest decrease, if that makes sense. So I think that's a good place to be in. I don't know if we necessarily want to be number 1 right now, but we're happy to be at the front of the pack. I'll go over just quickly some global outlook data. There is a 53% expected decrease in international arrivals, 34% expected decrease in domestic arrivals, and a $3.4 trillion loss in global GDP. Ouch. This is a graph that we've been using a lot from Oxford Economics, a reputable tourism research company. And as you can see, the worst month was expected in April and is going to increase from there, but still at the end of the year could likely be at negative 35% for lodging. Now some Visit Durango specific data. Myself and a number of my teammates are self-proclaimed data nerds, so we love to conduct surveys. And one survey we conducted was the Traveler Sentiment Survey. This is for people who had either traveled to Durango or were planning a trip to Durango. We had over 1,500 responses, so great sample size. And most of it was not surprising. People said they were less likely to travel by plane, go to a hot spring. But some of them were surprising, such as people saying they were more likely to take the train, also take a scenic drive, travel by car, visit a national park, and go camping. Only 7% of respondents said they would avoid hotels, and 7.5% said they would avoid restaurants. So that was a positive indicator for us. The first survey that I conducted after joining the team was the Tourism Business Stakeholder Survey. So this was for businesses located in La Plata County. And we asked these different industries what percentage of your customers are from outside of La Plata County. So what percentage are visitors? And you can see that for the attractions, they said 74%, outdoor rec 77%, arts just over half, restaurants and bars just under half. And this one I found surprising, retail and shopping 62%. So while of course we all agree that economic diversification is very important to the region, all of our businesses, not just our hotels, do heavily rely on visitation. We asked people what they thought Durango's competitive markets were. And I like this variety and cross-section that rose to the top: Telluride, Pagosa Springs, Santa Fe, Moab, and Denver. We also asked people what they thought our top outdoor recreation attractions are. Keep in mind this was conducted in winter, so skiing was a bit more top of mind at the time, but that did rise to number 1, and followed by cycling, mountain biking, whitewater rafting, hiking, hunting, and fishing. More from our resident survey, we asked what are the top 3 most important industries in the county. Tourism was by far the winner, followed by healthcare and agriculture. Some specific COVID-19 related questions. We asked, has La Plata County flattened the curve enough to feel safe welcoming visitors back? That was a pretty overwhelming disagree. 76% either disagreed or strongly disagreed with that statement. We asked people if they feel more comfortable with visitors due to the city's mask requirement, and that was a slight yes, so 55% either agreed or strongly agreed with that. We asked people, do you support responsible economic growth of tourism in the region? 78% agreed. Does tourism support jobs that people in your community need? 87% agreed. Now I'll get into some specific lodgers tax research. I compared the budgets and lodgers tax for those comps at other destinations that we compare ourselves to. And we are on the lowest end of the totem pole in regards to our amount of lodgers tax as well as our budget per capita. So this, of course, is another reason that we are strong advocates of the increase in lodger's tax. When comparing ourselves to those markets, we estimate a competitive budget for Visit Durango to be about 2.8 to 4.3 million. Currently, our budget is supposed to be 1.2 million. It's going to be under $1 million this year due to COVID. But just to give you a ballpark of, what we could aim for in order to compete with those other destinations. A question we get a lot is, do locals realize that visitors pay lodger's tax? And they do, for the most part. 87% knew that visitors pay the lodger's tax. Only 7% thought residents and 6% thought homeowners. So of course we asked, would you vote for an increase in lodger's tax? And 61% either agreed or strongly agreed. And some more marketing and sales specific data. There is much more information in the packets that I sent you, but this is some high-level highlights for our paid advertising, organic, social media, and our PR efforts. As you can see in the green, we are positively trending year over year in every category. These are some of our Q2 press highlights. So despite COVID, we are still making a big presence in the media. We have had media fam tours in town. We currently have a journalist in town right now. So people are still writing about how amazing Durango is. Our sales and services department, earlier in the year, that's when we attend more trade shows. So there were more leads then. And then of course, COVID obviously has affected things from March on. But even with that, we estimate economic impact of our sales efforts alone to be about $3.5 million. And lastly, our lovely Durango Welcome Center, which we were able to reopen in early June. We are seeing about 200 to 250 visitors to the center per day. The top states we see visiting are Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. And top countries, Germany, France, and Mexico. And thank you again for your generous donation of masks. We are going through those quickly. We're going through about 100 a day. So we're very glad that we're able to offer that in partnership with the city, and that people are utilizing that. And with that, I will wrap things up, but I just want to say thank you to council and the city. This is a difficult position to be in now more than ever. We are a bit in between a bit of a rock and a hard place, and it can be difficult to please both sides right now. But we really support the partnership and support of the city, and just want to say thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it. Great information, and I hope that's of interest to the public as well as council. And we'll be talking again soon. So. I might remind folks that we will be having a discussion about the lodger's tax in a study session upcoming, and then a presentation by Dala, and Rachel will be back to talk to us about that at a later date. So stay tuned. And thanks for using up all those masks.
We're happy to.
I think, we're on the same side on virtually every issue, I believe, and I think that we appreciate your help in making that distribution. And I think we've turned the tide a little bit walking around downtown today. I think your marketing and the mask order and the governor's help is all making us an effective and safe place to enjoy Durango. So thanks for your help.
Sure, we're happy to help and get the word out.
You bet. With that, next item is 5.2, a financial update from Devin, our interim financial director.
Good evening, Mayor and members of City Council. My name is Devin Schmidt. I am the acting finance director for the City of Durango. I'm going to be sharing my screen out, and I'm going to start off by going over the June 2020 monthly financial report. So to start off, I'm going to start with the year-to-date City of Durango sales tax collections by revenue. And so as you can see on the left-hand side, this is our total sales and use tax. Overall, we're down 1.5 million to date and 11%. in sales tax. So in a graphical format, you can see the blue here represents the estimated year-to-date budget. And by this time, historically, we have received around 46.9% of those revenues. And then this orange line here is our trend line for the actuals received. So you can see obviously January and February, we had some healthy sales tax collections. And then with the pandemic, we've been trending between down 7 to 15% year to date between those months. So the other item to note, and Rachel just mentioned this in her presentation, with the lodger's tax, we are seeing a bigger increase there, or a bigger decrease. And year to date, we're looking at a 60% decline and 325,759 shortfall thus far. So that is the sales tax and use tax for the city of Durango to date. So moving right along, I will start with where we're at on the general fund. So this is January to June year-to-date actuals and the estimated year-to-date budget. So you can see our revenues are somewhat behind what we would normally see at this point in the year. So by now, we normally have about 45.4% of those revenues. And on the budget perspective, we would generally be about $2.5 million in the hole. But on a positive note, our expenses are less than our revenues by $621,043. So we are doing a really good job with a lot of those initiatives that were put into place early in the year. Under the general fund revenues and general fund expenditures, this is a similar chart to what council just saw. So this is our estimated year-to-date budget. You can see the areas where we are short. And so charges and services are down. A lot of that's due to some of our rec center facilities. We're up in property taxes, and then the others, sales tax is obviously down as well, sales and use tax. So as far as general fund expenditures, high level, you can see that we're below on our actuals where we are normally year-to-date budget for every department. Community support, you can see there's a little uptick there, and that's likely due to some payments. So to some of those community support funding that happened earlier. So all positive from a general fund perspective. We're spending less than we have in revenue, so that's positive. Moving into the enterprise funds, on the water fund, you can see that revenue is exceeding expenditures by 1.6 million. In a budget where the water generally has about 38.5% of the budget year to date by this point, and is somewhere around 50.9% in spending. So water fund is looking healthy. Sewer fund, again, revenues are exceeding expenditures, 437,278. If you look at the estimated year-to-date budget between revenues and expenses, generally we are somewhat in the hole there by $678,054. And then looking at it on an actual basis, you can see actual to budget that we're in a good condition as well. Airport fund, we are $1.4 million in revenue and 1.3 in expenses. So just a little ahead of the curve. We should be receiving some of that CARES Act funding if it hasn't hit our accounts yet, but that's to come. Sustainable Services Fund, 1.5 million in revenue to the 794,000 in expenses. So we are ahead in that fund as well. And then the Transportation Services Fund, you'll see that we do have some areas where we're behind. We do expect to receive that CARES Act funding. So we will, that'll be short up here quickly, and we should see the Transportation Services Fund going into a better picture in the next month. Also with parking meters being closed for some portion of the year, that has an impact as well on some of those Transportation Service Fund revenues.
Devin, I had a question on that page, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
And particularly in the water fund, but also in the sewer fund, we seem to be way ahead of budget. Do you have any ideas about what's going on there?
I don't. I could certainly follow up with Jared and Levi, our assistant director and director, and find out what they are seeing in that.
It appears to be in expenses, and so I wanted to clarify that doesn't include capital. That's just operating expenses.
Correct.
Okay, that would be great to have some follow up on that.
And Devin, I also have a question, if I may. Last month on June 23rd, you had the estimated equities for each of these funds, just like on the previous page, you had it for I think the general fund. And you were going to give us the background on all of that, particularly the water, which had a $31 million estimated equity, in the sewer 17. And I know, in July, you wrote that you're working with Adams to provide that in a format that the public can really understand, the public that may not be an accountant. Any estimate of when you'll have the estimated equities and the backup as to what's involved in each one of those estimates?
Sure. So my anticipation would be that we would have that for our July monthly financial report. We met again with Adams Group last week, and we're certainly looking to display that in a way, as you mentioned, that you don't have to be an accountant to fully understand what's included in that. And so we'll have that for the July monthly financial report.
Thank you.
Certainly. Okay, if I don't have any other questions on the enterprise fund, I'm going to go ahead and move into the special revenues fund. So we have so these sales tax funds are going to operate similar to the sales tax screen that you had already seen. And so historically, we have that 46.9% of the revenues by this time. And so you can see the 15, the 05, and then 19 are in a healthy area, if you will, between revenue to expense. The ones that we need to keep close caution on and make sure that we really pay attention to is the 05 debt service. And I think we've talked a lot about this. In the event we don't see a pretty significant rebound, then we're going to need to look to cover that debt service with general fund monies. The Durango Tourism Fund, you can see, is also trajecting. We're $279,855, exceeding revenues to expenditures at this point. So just want to keep council abreast of that, and we'll continue to monitor that and make those changes. Moving into the internal service funds, the general services fund revenue to expenditures is somewhat behind by $73,940. This is an internal service fund, so those transfers, they do have a decent fund balance there, and so some of those transfers occur quarterly when it pertains to some of these internal service funds. So I would anticipate that we would see that change after the second quarter transfers occur. The SURF fund, you will see here, we're showing 1.7 that we are behind revenue to expenditures, and that is because we paused the transfers from the other departments into the SURF fund in order to see, because that had such a healthy fund balance, if we can continue this year not making those transfers to help offset some of the costs in the other funds. Self-insurance fund, we are healthy with 321,831 ahead of revenues to expenditures. This fund being somewhat volatile because it's on a claims basis, we continue to monitor that one pretty closely, but you can see that we're doing pretty well with that. And then the risk management fund, we are looking at just 40,000 behind revenues to expenditures in that fund. And so I did include, and I'm just going to go over general fund. There is detailed information, and this will be posted on our City of Durango website for the public. But I did want to walk through the general fund quickly to provide council with the information on here. So as you can see, sales tax, we're showing, you can see the areas where we have where we're ahead of budget with property taxes and areas where we're somewhat behind. So, you know, of course, the $15,000 in paving assessments isn't going to make or break the city, but just wanted to provide council some of these highlights. And then from a departmental expenditure standpoint, you can see we're down 22% overall in the general fund in those expenditures. And I don't think, looks like fire is up 1%. So doing a really great job with a lot of the cost saving initiatives, and we'll continue to do so that we can mitigate some of those revenue losses that we're seeing. And if I don't have any other questions, I'd like to move into the second quarter CIP workbook.
I do have a question, Devin. I think last week, I think Councilor Baxter asked about the CAFRA, and if I'm remembering, you said we would have it by September. Is that the anticipated date? Can you verify that?
Yes. Yeah. So at this point, we should have the airport CAFR, because we do those separately as that being a joint venture with the county. We'll have that August 30th. And then the City of Durango CAFR is slated at this point to be completed September 30th. And so I understand we have Ide Bailey joining us at the next study session. And so we can certainly cover some more of that information with them as well.
So my question is, as we go into the budget planning, to not have a year end for how we ended 2019 is really difficult. So we had up to November of 2019. And I'm just wondering, could we not just get a December estimate so we could be looking at pretty close to how we closed the year?
So I got a little bit
rather
further,
than waiting till September 30th for the final, wrapped up document.
Certainly. So Adams Group, since they're preparing the CAFR this year, they'll actually have it done, prior to that. At that time, we could share that information with council, and then it would go to Ide Bailey to be audited further from there. Our expectation is that we wouldn't see any changes from Adams Group to Ide Bailey. That's our goal. I'm not going to say absolutely not, there won't be any, but that is certainly our goal to have that. So we could certainly give those unaudited financial statements prior to, if that's a wish of council.
So we could get them like next week, or when you say you're going to give them to Adams, I'm not certain of the time frame.
Yeah, no problem. So we are working diligently with Adams Group to complete some of those year-end entries. We're currently in the fixed assets realm right now. And so as soon as we have that information done, the Adams Group then will receive that information and they'll prepare the financial statements. But when they're completed with the financial statements, if council wanted that information prior to it going to the auditors, we could provide that.
And Devin, one thing that you might consider here is that for the budget purposes, we don't really need the asset and liability equity section of the financial statements. What we really need is the operating revenues and expenses.
Sure.
So that might be one way to make this process a little quicker, is not to have to wait for that fixed asset evaluation.
Yeah, and I can follow up with council and provide an update on that next week after talking with Adam's group as well. We're still in a process of doing a lot of the work, and so I'm hesitant to say, we could give that to you guys. I don't know what date yet, and I could certainly provide a date to council at the next week's study session if that would be helpful.
I appreciate that, and I realize that you're working very hard at this, and COVID hasn't helped. But as Councilor Noseworthy mentioned, it's going to be difficult to go not only for council, but for staff to go into budgets without any idea of how 2019 actually ended up.
Yeah, absolutely. I certainly agree with that. And that's definitely going to be our starting basis for the budget. But, since we're still working on a lot of that stuff, I'll touch base with Adam's group and I'd Bailey and see, in their professional opinion, when we could get that to council. And if that would be something that was a consensus item that all of council wanted.
I think that's important to note, Devin, also, is whether or not that's information that should pass at that time. We don't go into budget sessions until after September, and that should give us plenty of time to look at final data instead of publishing something that might go public before that. If it comes to council, it goes public. So I think that scrutiny is probably not warranted if the timing works out fine. So maybe the recommendation from the preparers and also from the city manager and yourself as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, Chris, certainly we could, I'll touch base with them and get their professional opinion on it. And we can bring that to the study session for discussion with them I think it's next week.
It is.
Devin, this is Mayor Brookie. I just want to know essentially how much time we need to wrap up, and we're about an hour into the conversation. We haven't gotten to a consent agenda yet. I might remind the councilors that we've got a very full agenda tonight. And are we close to the financial update wrap up? Or
we're done with the financial update, Dean. I was just going to give a quick update on the Q2 CIP, and I will scream through that if I don't have any other questions on the monthly financial update.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Certainly, yeah. So we're going to fly through this one pretty quickly. All of this will be posted on our website. So this is our general fund Q2 projects, and you can see that we have 3 that are in that needing funding appropriated. We did go ahead and add the items that were deferred due to COVID at the bottom section of each one of these reports, and this is by fund. And so I'm going to move on to airport. Airport, we have 1 project that's needing funding. We have 2 that are in design, 3 that are in proposal RFP process, 2 where construction is underway, and then we have 8 projects that are complete in the airport. Once again, you can see we have these two projects down here that were deferred due to COVID, and we'll continue to keep those on the report unless they are no longer deferred. Looking at utilities, so this is going to be water and sewer. We have 1 project where the funding is needed. We have 10 in project design. We have 1 where we're looking at permitting. There's 4 projects that are on the RFP process, 14 construction underway, and 4 where the projects are complete. And again, we have quite a few projects that were deferred as a result of COVID in the water and sewer fund. Sustainability, we just have the 1 project there, and that is currently in design, and then 1 project that was deferred due to COVID. For the 05 sales tax, we have 3 projects that are in design, and 5 projects that are in construction, and 1 project that is in permitting, 2 projects that are deferred. In the 2015 sales tax fund, we have 1 project needing funding. We have 3 that are in design and 1 that is in contracting. We have 8 that are in construction and 2 that are complete, and then a large handful in this fund that are deferred at this point. And then the 2019 sales tax, we have one that is in that funding appropriated, and then we have one that is in RFP and contracting. We have 2 projects that are complete, and we have 3, that are in construction. And so moving on to the transportation and parking fund, we have 2 that are in construction and 3 that are deferred due to COVID. And so if I don't have any questions on the CIP.
I do.
Sure.
But what I will do is, first of all, Devin, thank you for printing this up in a large enough format that I could read it. So I appreciate that. But because I wasn't able to get to it, to see it till just before our 4:30 meeting, I have questions particularly, but I'm going to send them in writing. I have questions particularly on items that have 100% of the project remaining, and they're not necessarily in design. So I will put it up, copy all of council, and I would hope that you would be able to answer the questions for me. And then there is one where it says, and it doesn't have the amount, and it talks about the original funding was appropriated in 2002. So I'll ask about that as well, but I'll send these as a document to all of council and you and the city manager with the hope that you could answer these questions before the next meetings so that we have, because I recognize how little time we have right now and the little time we all had to review them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Devin, and thank you, Councilor Noseworthy, too. Anything that obviously any questions we have, we can certainly get the answers by asking. So appreciate that, and I hope it's of interest to the general public as well. And with that, we'll let Devin get some time off and move on to the Utilities Administration Building Update, item 5.3, which again, we've asked our construction team to give us an update on that new construction we see out at the wastewater treatment facility. So do we have Greg Boyson or Jared Biggs to do that presentation?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'm Greg Boyson. I'll give you the update tonight. I'm the city engineer and the project manager for the Santa Rita Water Reclamation Facility and the administration building and the vac truck building. So let me see if I can share my screen. Boy, I'm having trouble with that. I'm sorry, I had to change computers right at the last minute while the meeting was starting. So
Well, hang in there and maybe Mitchell can help you out. I know he's probably on it.
Yeah, give me a minute. I'm going to need to convert it, but I will be able to share my screen momentarily.
So I'll just go ahead and start if you don't mind. What I'd like to talk to you about tonight is the budget, which includes the project status and the contingency fund, where we're at with the remaining budget to be used for any changes in the project itself. I'll also talk about the current construction. We've got some photographs that I'll share with you. And then at the end, we'll go over the construction schedule. So let me go ahead. I think most of this information is stuff that the council already has. The combined administration building and the vac truck and camera building bids came in at just a little under $9.3 million. We've made 11 payments to, if you could go to the next one, Mitchell. We've made 11 payments to Janes Corporation. They're the general contractor. The payments have totaled a little over $6 million, which leaves $3.3 million left in the contract to pay out Colorado Janes. So that gives us a project completion in a percentage of 65%. I expect to get another pay request this Friday, which will bring the project completion up to around 75%. The contingency fund, it was originally started at $343,000. Since the project started, we've done 4 change orders. They've been relatively straightforward change orders. We've included some room improvements on the IT room and the AV room. We had to do some extra excavation, just standard construction stuff. So far we've had 4 change orders. Out of the contingency, we also had to hire Troutner Geotech to do all of our material testing. That included compaction on the soil, compressive strengths of the concrete, and the steel inspections. We also hired Western Technologies for $2,000 to do some interpretation for our geologic report. And then Ye and Associates was hired to do structural inspections on the building itself. Elam Concrete, that was a little unique payment. We had a historic cottonwood tree that was discovered buried, I think, from the 1911 flood in the middle of the project site. And that was a fairly large excavation. And to assure that we had proper compaction on that excavation, we filled it with low-strength concrete. And rather than pay the markup to Janes to buy that concrete, we just bought it directly from Elam, and we saved, I think probably a couple $1,000 just on that direct purchase. And then the final thing we've used the contingency for was $3,800 to pay Durango Fire Protection District for their plan review. This leaves us currently with about $214,000 in the contingency, and the math works out that we've used about 38% of that contingency. Again, I like to compare those numbers to the project completion. If we were exceeding the project completion percentage with the contingency used, I'd be concerned, but we're well below that. So I'm feeling pretty good right now. A couple of outstanding expenses that I can foresee is that we have a furniture budget of $80,000. We're in the final negotiations with the furniture supplier, and it'll be about $17,000 less than that. But even if I take the $80,000 out of the existing contingency, we still have almost $143,000 left to complete the project. The next slide is a photograph that Mitchell and Victor took. That shows the west side of the building under construction. You can see the portico. Those are the bars that are sticking out from the building wall. That's where the public restroom access is. So people from the Animas River Trail can come up to the building and use the public restrooms. On the windows on the right side, on the first floor, those look into the conference room, and then the small thin windows on the left side are the locker rooms for the men and women for the workers. On the upper second floor, the windows that are covered in plastic, that's the open work area that overlooks the Animas River and Smelter Mountain. And then the smaller windows on the left side are the director's offices. I'll point out now that the white area is styrofoam insulation, and the yellow area is our spray-on vapor barrier. So the vapor barrier prevents any air movement or moisture movement from the outside to the inside of the building. And then, of course, the styrofoam is for heat insulation. All of the styrofoam will get covered with metal sheathing, as will the roof. On the next slide, it shows the east side of the building. And the dominant feature is the shop building. That's the big concrete structure with the two garage doors. That building's going to be used from the collection distribution department. That's where they're going to house all their equipment and their vehicles. You can see in the building, the second floor windows, those are all into individual offices. And then the windows on the bottom are looking into the laboratory. On the far left side, you can see the rock wall that goes up the stairwell from the lobby area up to the second floor. The next slide is the southern exposure, and that shows the entrance going into the building. Again, you can see all of the rock work, which is complete. On the lower left-hand side is the main entrance that the public will use to get into the lobby area. The rather tall item that is covered in plastic is going to be a storefront glass window, which will allow light into the lobby area, which is it's pretty neat looking when you're standing inside looking out. So it's a really nice feature on the building. And then again, the stairwell is shown clad in the new stonework, and it also has a fairly large window as you're climbing the stairs. The next photograph is an aerial that shows the overall shape of the building. And it really shows the curvature of the building and the clamshell shape of the roof. It really makes this building unique. It's going to be a real standout for Durango in the long-term future. One thing from this photograph I might point out is the small yellow tractor on the north side or the upper part of the picture. That will be the new parking lot for all the employees for the building. The existing parking lot that you see will be maintained for the public, so they have direct access into the building itself. The next slides are photographs that I took. Sorry, I can't fly like Mitchell and Victor, but the photograph on the left side shows the portico and the access into the public restrooms. Also shows the windows that are surrounded by the stone veneer looking into the conference room. Again, the photograph on the right is the south exposure where the main entrance is that accents the lobby window and the stairwell. The next photograph is the east elevation of the building. Again, it shows the windows that look into the offices on the upper floor and the lab on the bottom floor. It also shows the shop room that the C&D department will use, but it also shows the stone enclosed stairwell number 2. That stairwell will be used by the employees, and that's trying to keep the separation between the public and the secured areas. So that's a second stairwell that will be used by strictly the employees. The next photograph shows the interior of the building. I didn't take a whole lot because they're all basically the same, but the photograph on the left shows that all the sheetrock on the first floor has been hung and taped and textured, and most of the first floor has been painted out. So we're moving along real nicely on the first floor with the tenant finish work. The photograph on the right side shows the tile floor that's going in the women's locker room. The men's locker room floor will follow. It's almost done today. And then they'll tile all of the showers in the locker rooms. So we're starting to do the flooring and painting the walls on the first floor. So the building is really proceeding fairly nicely and on time. The next photograph shows the second floor. The left photograph is looking into the individual offices on the second floor that the personnel will occupy. And then the photograph on the right side is the roof and patio area. It's a good picture that shows the clamshell design of the roof line. but it also shows the windows overlooking the Animas River and Smelter Mountain. So again, a really nicely designed building that's coming together very well. The final photograph is the vac truck and camera van building. We are placing the concrete block above the van drive-in. Right now, the roof has been started over the hose room, and the rest of the roofing will be completed within 2 weeks. So that building will be dried in within 2 weeks. There's not a whole lot of tenant finish on the vac truck building. So that building will be completed probably substantially sooner than the administration building. Then the final slide I have is the schedule. Like I said, the schedule's going pretty well. We did the notice proceed back in September of 12th in 2019. And the contract completion date is December 15th of this year. The contractor and I keep a 6-week look ahead. That way we can task the work schedule for that week and upcoming weeks. And right now, our estimated completion of the project will be October 23rd, which will be a little more than a month sooner than what the contract completion date requires. So again, the schedule is working relatively well. The weather this winter helped a lot. Keeping the monsoons away for the early part of spring has also helped construction. Upcoming, we plan to get install the remainder of the windows on the building. This will allow us to finish the interior walls and paint both the first floor and second floor. We're going to put the metal sheathing on the walls and metal roofing on the building. That'll complete the outside of the building. And then following the interior finish, we'll do the lighting, install the casework, then the drop ceilings go in, followed by flooring. And all during that time, we'll try to get the site grading done. So again, we've got a busy month and a half to get all the interior done, but it's going very well. Milestones that I keep track of is we plan on paving the north parking lot August 14th. So, in 3 weeks, we'll be laying asphalt. And then I've got the furniture delivery scheduled for mid-September. So in mid-September, we'll be punching the inside of the building out, setting the furniture, and installing all the audio-visual equipment. So that's a real quick update. I know you guys are busy, but I'm certainly here to answer any questions, and I can follow up and give you any information you may want.
Thanks, Greg. Great presentation. And any questions from council?
I actually have one. And Greg, thank you. Thank you, particularly the visuals. It's really helpful to be able to see it. This is actually related to the Santa Rita water point, and it does tie to the CIP. So, and I apologize for not sending questions in advance, but it was a scheduling issue and an information issue. The state revolving loan fund, and if you can't answer now, I totally get that. But on the CIP project, it shows a negative 43 fund balance, and that, we were supposed to spend a 1.5 million, and we've exceeded that by 642,000. So I'm sure there's an explanation around it, but it did jump out at me on this CIP report. So I did want to bring that to your attention, and that'll be one of the items that I have questions about, and hope that we can get a clarification on that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Sure. I think that type of question would be better answered by Devin and Jared. So I work with the numbers they give me, and they do all of the hard math. So I'll get with Devin and Jared, and we'll get you an answer on that.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excellent. Well, looks like we've got a wonderful project that both past and present councilors are anxious to see come to fruition. So I appreciate your diligence, Greg. And with that, we'll move on to our next topic, which is the consent agenda. So the consent agenda is intended to allow City Council by a single motion to approve matters that are considered routine or non-controversial. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member requests an item be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered under agenda item 7.0. So with that, maybe we have a reading of the consent agenda, and then we'll ask for any items to be removed.
Absolutely. Items 6.1 through 6.4 are approval of minutes. Item 6.1 is for a special city council meeting on June 30th, 2020. Item 6.2 is for the city council special meeting on July 7th, 2020. Item 6.3 was for the city council meeting on July 7th, 2020. And item 6.4 was for the special meeting on July 9th, 2020. Items 6.5 and 6.6 are discussion and possible action items. 6.5 concerns the submission of a CDBG grant application on behalf of Homes Fund, Inc. Item 6.6 concerns the approval of a resolution authorizing an additional appropriation to the general fund for the Colorado Department of Law post-grant excess of the amount budgeted in the 2020 budget. Items 6.7 and 6.8 are final approval of ordinances. 6.7 is for ordinance O-2020-7, authorizing the conveyance of 1/2 interest in city-owned property known as Tract A3 of Macaw Subdivision Number 1, project number 91-142 at 820 Airport Road to La Plata County and declaring an effective date. And then lastly, item 6.8 is final approval for ordinance O-2020-8 of the City of Durango, Colorado, amending Article 5 of Chapter 2, which is for finance of the City Code by the addition of a Division 4 Tabor Emergency Reserve and declaring an effective date.
Thank you, Ben. Councilors, would you like to remove any items from the consent agenda?
Yeah, Dean, thank you for asking. I'd like to remove item 6.5.
6.5. Any others, councilors? Okay. With that, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 6.5?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Noseworthy,
Yes.
Councilor Bettine,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter,
Yes.
and Mayor Bricky.
Yes. And with that, we'll move on to item 8, which is the removed consent agenda items. And so we'll discuss 6.5, which is a discussion and possible action concerning the submission of a CDBG grant application on behalf of the Homes Fund, Inc. We might start with Councilor Baxter. What particular concerns you might have and what you'd like to hear?
Sure, thank you. I found the documentation a little bit confusing, so I just wanted some clarity. The purpose and background, it says that it's requesting that the City of Durango sponsor an application not to exceed $500,000 on the behalf of the Homes Fund. So the second documentation, which is a resolution, actually says that there exists $487,000 in additional pass-through grant revenues to be received from the CDBG grant. So I'm just a little confused. It would appear from the resolution that there already exists that amount of money. And is that what the grant actually is? Because on the first page it says not more than $500,000. So that's one of my questions. Just want to make sure what that is. And if we haven't applied for the grant yet, so we don't know when it will be received, are we planning on transferring the additional revenues through immediately, or is it going to be based upon when those monies are received? And if it's going to be when they're received, I think it should be in the resolution stating that. The other question I had was, who's paying the administration costs for this grant, given that it's a grant to benefit Homes Fund? I realize that only municipalities can apply, but will Homes Fund be fund that will be supporting the administration costs on this?
Councilor or Mayor Pro Tem Baxter, Kevin Hall will be responding to your question.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Kevin?
Councilors, Kevin Hall, Assistant City Manager. We've been working with Homes Fund a number of years on these pass-through dollars. They typically carry over multiple seasons or years. Forgive me, I didn't prepare these agenda docs. However, I'm generally familiar with the program, in which I think councilors are as well, in terms of they're using it for the mortgage assistance program. My understanding is they ask for the dollars as they're needed to pass them through. They have opportunities to pursue additional dollars. They're in that timeline right now to pursue the next tranche of funding, if you will. And I did not speak directly with Lisa Bloomquist Palmer. If we need to do some amendments to the resolution, we certainly can do that to clarify your concerns. I think it sounds like a fairly straightforward act to do so. And then the other question was administration costs. Right, I do believe.
Thank you, Kevin, I appreciate that.
I can answer that one, Kevin.
Thank
So the city of Durango takes an administrative fee from the grant. So the city is paid through the grant, the administrative fee, as the administrator of the program, and then the tranches of money are passed through to the Homes Fund.
Okay, I think it would be really helpful in the future to be clearer about all those types of specifics, timing of transfers of money, who's paying for what, so that it's clear and everybody understands that, the public as well as us.
Can do. Thank you.
I might ask what the impact of deferring a decision on this might be to the Homes Fund. I do recall that we've done this on a fairly regular basis, and as in annually. But if we were to get that information that Councilor Baxter was looking for, and bring this up next.
So I'm not actually asking for us to push the application process off.
Right.
I do think the resolution could, because it's actually a resolution authorizing an additional appropriation when we don't actually have the grant yet. So I think that one could probably be pushed off, but I see no reason not to go ahead with the grant application personally.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. I would agree with that, and that we have ability to get further clarification on the timing and the allocation once the funds are received.
That'd be great. I'd be absolutely satisfied with that. Thank you. And then therefore I could make a motion to approve and authorize the submission of a grant application to the Division of Housing on behalf of Homes Fund for the CDBG grant without the resolution attached to it.
Excellent. It's been moved. Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any further discussion? Thank you. With that, no further discussion. I'll ask for roll call, please.
Councilor Noseworthy,
Yes.
Councilor Bettine,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter,
Yes.
and Mayor Brickey.
Yes. Thank you. And I think that was good. Moving on, we have public hearings, a number of them tonight. The first is the legislative and policy related hearing, 9.1.1, which is a continued public hearing to consider granting leases and easements for the Esparo Permanent Supportive Housing Project on the city's social service campus. Do we have a staff report, please?
We do. I'm going to share my screen here.
Welcome, Vicki.
Thank you. So this is, I'm Vicki Vandergrift, a planner with the City of Durango, and this is a public hearing to consider the granting of the leases and easements for Esparo Permanent Supportive Housing Project on the city's social service campus. And just a tiny bit of background, permanent supportive housing means low barrier, non-time limited affordable housing for residents who earn 30% area median income and below and are experiencing homelessness or have disabilities. Support services to help individuals and families lead more stable lives are also provided on site. And this is a social services campus, a picture of it. This is the soup kitchen. This is Hilltop House. This is the Housing Solutions. And this is a property that's going to be leased for the permanent supportive housing project. And then this property south of it is the property that we're talking about for some of the off-site leases that we'll give you a little bit more detail on. So a little background on the project itself. The land use permit was actually approved through a limited use permit in May of 2019. The project received the low income tax credits in the fall of 2019, which will allow them to finance up to a $10 million project. A major site plan was approved by the Planning Commission on April 27th, 2020, and the Design Review Board approved the final design on the project on May 12th, 2020. The site, just to show everyone, is here, the site plan. This is a building location at the southern part of the property, and then this is a courtyard that they're creating for their residents. And then they have some of the parking areas on the site. This is what the building will look like. This landscape plan can kind of show you the lease boundaries pretty easily. It also shows the landscaping that's being proposed, but the lease boundary goes basically along this area. And this is the Esparo lease boundary, which is one of the two leases that you will be considering. So this is showing it again on the campus itself. It's a 1.35 acre property. And then Housing Solutions lease is also being, is on tonight's agenda because it has to be amended because they gave some of their property to the Esparo project, and so their new boundary will basically follow the Esparo boundary here, and then it pretty much goes straight up and over. This is what the survey looks like. I don't have a nice picture of that one. So that's it for the two leases. And now for easements, there's a number of easements that are going to be granted as a part of this project. There was a new water main installed and fire hydrants. There was an easement to reroute the sewer main. There's a gas easement going to Atmos Energy. There's an electrical easement going to La Plata Electric Association. There's an off-site easement, emergency access road easement. There's an off-site stormwater pond easement, and then there's off-site grading. So to show you what that looks like, the blue is the off-site, is the easement to the city for water and sewer for city utilities. The brown is the Atmos easement. The red over on the side, which hopefully you can see, is the LPEA easement. And then this little black dash lined up here is the off-site grading easement that goes onto the Hilltop property, which is also city property, a leased area. The easements to the south going across the property is the emergency access easement to that part on the parcel below, south of this property. And then the drainage easement is at this location where the new park shop built a pond here, and they're going to enlarge that and share it. So we did receive one letter of support from Aspara Apartment project from Stan and Carolyn Mason at 235 Rock Point Drive. The letter also expressed opposition to the use of the adjacent property for a homeless camp. And I believe Amber, interim city manager Amber Blake, is going to read that. Did you want to do that now, or would you like to do it at the end of my presentation?
Whenever you would typically take public comment would be the appropriate time.
We will open a public hearing, I believe, and that'd be the appropriate time, I believe, if we can do
Thank
that.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicki.
So as far as fiscal impact, there's no direct significant fiscal impact to the city associated with the execution of the leases or granting of the easements. And the city will receive a nominal lease payments. The 40 units of affordable permanent supportive housing is valued at approximately $10 million. So it will be redeveloped as a result of these actions. As far as applicability to the council goals and comprehensive plan, providing permanent supportive housing within the city of Durango is meeting an unaddressed and crucial need that has been identified as a housing priority. The development of this project is in conformance with the City Council goals and the housing element of the comprehensive plan. And so that it is a recommendation of the interim city manager and the city attorney that the City Council hear public testimony related to these requests, and by motion, direct the interim city manager to finalize and execute the lease agreements, approve the described easements, and direct the city attorney to conduct first reading of the ordinances authorizing the leases and granting the easements later in the meeting agenda under introduction of ordinances. So with that, any questions?
Questions of council to the staff, if we can do this now, or we can, we'll have another opportunity to ask questions of staff and the developer. Or I can open the public hearing at this point. Seeing none, I'd like to open the public hearing and receive any public comment relative to this topic. And also we know that we have, as was mentioned, one written statement that we can read into the public record. Mitchell, do we have any public comments?
Yes, Mayor, we do have a couple people raising their hands. I am going to allow Gerald to speak. So Gerald, if you will unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes.
Hello, I am speaking for myself and my wife, Linda. On Sunday evening, we submitted written comments, several pages, and it looks like they were not received. Is that true?
That is not true. They have been received, and they will, I was planning to read those into the public record, and then your email with, are you the one that attached photographs? You will be,
no,
photographs will be included. I'll share those as I read.
No, that was Stan and Carolyn Mason.
Okay.
This is a separate submission from Gerald and Linda Harris.
I have 13 pages of comments. Yes, I do have sincerely Linda Harris. And right. I have the letter from both of you.
Great.
Gerald.
Okay. I didn't see it on the presentation. That's why I was asking. So then, well, I guess my 3 minutes have started. I did have a few additional comments, and I will go as long as I can. You have written comments for the record, so let me just read a few additional comments. First, the purpose background section of the agenda mentions that various actions regarding this housing proposal occurred several dates from 2017 through May of this year. However, to our knowledge, the first official notice we received on this matter was June 18th of 2020. This seems counter to the notion of allowing timely public comment on the city's proposed actions. Our comments are now being sought on a project whose outcome, for all practical purposes, seems already to have been decided. Second, the physical impact section of the agenda states that there is no direct significant physical impact of the proposed actions. In the short term, that may be true, but please refer to question 1E in our comments, which basically mentions that in the homelessness strategic plan, page 48, there seems to be a need for $87,000 a year for support services. If that funding is not found, will there or could there in fact be a physical impact on the city? And also, as we have requested, we hope you'll be able to provide an answer to that question as well as the other questions we raised in the first section of our comments. The second section of our comments deals with how increasing homeless support services near downtown Durango businesses, tourist attractions, the city park, and surrounding residential neighborhoods will exacerbate an already worrisome situation. There's not time this evening to discuss the points we raised, so let me simply reiterate the first sentence of the final paragraph, which says, decisions regarding future proposals to accommodate the Durango homeless population, such as relocation of the Purple Cliffs homeless camp, should not be made without specific consideration of the undesired effects that would be visited upon the heart of Durango business and tourism. And lastly, I hope you'll be able to read some of the incidents described by Linda and a concerned downtown Durango retail manager about encounters with likely homeless in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gerald. And for the record, I should have stated that we need your name and address for the record for the recording. if that's possible. Would you be able to state that for us? Mr. Harris?
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah.
I thought I was still unmuted. Gerald and Linda Harris, 235 Rock Point Drive, Unit C, Durango, 81301.
Excellent. Thank you so much. All right, Mitchell.
We do have another person raising their hand. I will allow Doug to speak. So Doug, please introduce yourself and unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Doug Lyon. I live at 940 East 5th Avenue. And thank you very much for allowing me to speak on this issue this evening. A quick story. I was up in Greenmont Cemetery, where I'm a major landowner, visiting my mother a couple of weeks ago. And to my great disappointment and growing alarm, I found a guy sleeping in the afternoon right by her final resting place, which I find to be very personally upsetting. I believe that Greenmont Cemetery is a place that we should take special care because so many people we love are interred up there, and they're counting on us to do that. And I'm also alarmed because my father visits my mother quite often, and he walks around in Greenmont Cemetery. And I cannot take a risk that my 85, almost 86-year-old father will be accosted by some homeless guy while he's visiting my mother. And I wish I'd have taken a picture of it. I didn't. And I just briefly, my philosophy on community safety is that we should have the fact and the feeling of safety for any member of our community, any place in the community at any time of day, which of course includes a 120-pound new mother pushing a baby carriage in Schneider Park. And it includes an elderly person visiting a loved one up in Greenmont Cemetery, for instance. And so there's my story. And I have some questions in connection to that. I've always liked the Volunteers of America homeless shelter up there at the city's social services compound because they had rules. And they have a no drugs and no alcohol rule. And so I'm a little bit alarmed that this will be low threshold housing. I think that job one is to have no drugs and no alcohol at a place like that because there's nothing good that can come out of it. And so I'll ask you to comment on that, please, if you have a few moments. And also, who will pay the ongoing expenses for this operation? Because sooner or later, I think that those ongoing expenses will come back to the city. They will come back to the city sooner or later. And for the third question, if this program is oversubscribed, there are more homeless people that want it than we can provide accommodations. How will the decision be made as to who gets in? And I'll note that if you raise the threshold for entrance by having no drugs and no alcohol, you'll cut the number of applicants. And so that concludes my my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug Lyon. If we could get your name and address for the record, please. Sorry to, again.
Yeah, Doug Lyon, 940 East 5th Avenue.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Mitchell, do we have more comment?
I do not see anybody else raising their hand. If you are an attendee and want to speak during this public hearing, please utilize the raise hand function within Zoom.
While we're waiting, I might say that, yeah, if we can get some response to those questions posed. And Amber, do we need to, we do have that letter that you've got read into the public record in its entirety.
Mayor, nobody else is raising their hand, so I think we can move on.
Okay, so we can move on to the document that Amber has.
All right, so what I'm going to do, because there are a number of photographs that are included in some of this comment, in the public comment, is I will share my screen and read the text and then scroll through the photographs, because I assume that's how the individuals would do this at the dais or the podium. And then we have three letters. It's a total of 13 pages. So I will do this.
And of course, if we can get their name and address for the record.
Absolutely. Share this. Okay. Mitchell, if you could please start the, oh my gosh, that's not what I want to share here. It's this one. If you can start the thing once I go. So Gerald and Linda Harris, 235 Rock Point Drive, Unit C, Durango, Colorado, 81301. We are writing in response to your letter dated June 18th, 2020, in which you announced that a public hearing on the subject proposal will be conducted on July 7th, later changed to July 21st, and you invited written testimony or oral testimony. As we understand it, based on an October 8th article in the Durango Herald and plans provided by the Community Development Department, the Aspara Apartments are to be a 3-story, 40-unit building to house homeless people having a physical or mental disability. Each apartment will house no more than 2 people. The building is to be located between the Durango Community Shelter and the LPEA substation below Greenmount Cemetery. We welcome the opportunity to submit formal questions, concerns, and comments on this proposal. At times, we make reference to the City of Durango and La Plata County Strategic Plan on Homelessness, January 2020, which we refer to as the Strategic Plan. 1, questions as to how the apartments will be operated. Who will own the property? Who will manage the property? Will that be Housing Solutions of the Southwest? Will a manager be present 24/7? Who will ensure and how will they ensure that no apartment houses more than 2 people? According to the strategic plan, page 48, the building is funded, but Housing Solutions is looking for $87,000 a year for support services. If no or inadequate funding is found, how will yearly operating expenses be paid for? In the case that there could be fiscal impact on the city. Will medical services be available on site? If issues of safety, cleanliness, crime, etc. should arise, what is the recourse that's available for those living in the immediate neighborhood? And the Herald article said that residents will be selected by Southwest Colorado Continuum of Care based on a standardized questionnaire assessing vulnerability. Is that correct? We assume that being employed is not required for residency. Is that correct? Will there be rules regarding alcohol and marijuana use? Will there be a limit placed on pets? Will there be any direct relationship with the Durango Community Shelter run by Volunteers of America, or will operations be totally independent? We would
60
appreciate
seconds.
your considered responses to these questions before the project is started. 2, in this item, we discuss our main concern, which is how increasing homelessness support services near downtown Durango businesses, tourist attractions, a city park, and surrounding residential neighborhoods will exacerbate an already worrisome situation. The
30
strategic
seconds.
plan obviously was a major effort and it has many thoughtful ideas. However, while it profiles the impacts of homelessness on the community, including areas in and around downtown, it does not deal specifically with the negative effects of locating more homeless services near the downtown area. The strategic plan's goal should be evaluated in light of another plan developed by the city titled the Downtown Vision and Strategic Plan 2006, described as a 20-plus year plan defining how the downtown area can grow and prosper in an increasingly competitive environment while continuing to attract new businesses, residents, and tourists. It envisions downtown that provides appealing pedestrian and bicycle-friendly landscape and streetscape environment while preserving its historic tradition. Further, it describes measures to keep downtown authentic, a place that belongs to locals while being attractive to visitors, and to reinforce downtown's role as the heart of the community, embodying its identity, values, and energy. Achieving these ends is made more difficult when having to deal with the negative aspects of supporting a nearby homeless population. 2 longstanding successful providers of services to homelessness and less fortunate people are Manna Soup Kitchen since 1985 and the Durango Community Shelter since 1991. Through no fault of their own, of course, town has grown up and around them, and actions of some of those that they serve have had a negative impact on our downtown and surrounding residential areas. Sorry. We are in no way making a blanket judgment. We imagine that the majority of those local homeless community who receive services are doing their best to better their circumstances and act responsibly. Mitchell, did you say time's up?
I did, yes.
Sorry, thank you. So this is the rest I want to provide you with. So there's that one. The next one is, that was Gerald. This is Linda Harris. So I'll go for this one. This would be Linda Harris, same address as stated previously. My husband and I love Durango and have had an apartment here since 1980. We now live in a townhouse we've owned for 10 years that is located above the Durango Tech Center. Some of our experiences since residing here include the following. Also, please see the PS below on the last page. Our doorbell rung at 3 a.m. A man standing in our driveway yelling and threatening us as we were trying to back out of our garage. The same man walking to our backyard and looking into our living room window. Police were then called. A person in a tent camping in the backyard of a neighboring townhome when it was empty and for sale. Police were called. A man crawling up on the bedroom balcony of my neighbor's townhome trying to steal a sculpture on the adjacent balcony. Police were called. A drunk woman lying in the grass shoulder a few feet from our driveway. Police were called. A large amount of blood and some clothes found by my neighbor on a large rock across from her townhome, and a trail of blood going down the hill towards Rusa Avenue. Police were called. A man with a large backpack following me up the path to our townhouse and yelling at me. I confronted him and he said he was looking for a camp. A large man walking next to my neighbor's townhome swinging two large chains in the air. In addition to the above neighbor occurrences, the following has happened to me while walking alone in the morning on the Animas River Trail below our house. Numerous people on the grass in Schneider Park, face down and motionless, seeing a man with his penis in his hand, urinating in the grass near the Main Street Bridge heading to Rotary Park, seeing a woman standing nude from the waist down with her pants around her ankles urinating, next to and facing the path at 9th Street Bridge where people were walking on the trail under the bridge. Police were called. Being shouted at multiple times by groups of men seemingly loitering by the trail leading from 9th Street Bridge to Albertsons. Received inappropriate comments from groups of men sitting at two different tables by the trail. The incidents described above have occurred when the homeless camp was located near the tech center. I don't know if any of these people were homeless. I do know that since the homeless camp was moved to the Purple Cliffs area, we've had 0 incidents and I personally feel safer. Based on our past experiences, I dread and shudder at the thought of the impact of having a larger population of homeless people, whether permanently sheltered or in tents, even closer to this or nearby residential developments, as well as Schneider Park, the easily accessible merchant and business community. Some people may think that expanding the homeless community in the proposed location below the cemetery is just part of being in a civilization, a sign of the times, but I don't see why that needs to be when there are other alternative locations further from Main Street, Tourist District, residential areas, and parks. Sincerely, Linda Harris. P.S. We have also received a few anecdotal examples listed below from concerned downtown Durango retail manager who wishes to remain anonymous but expressed worried about this location's effect on downtown Durango and its ability to drive tourism and keep its vision as a destination city. We have to call the police department at least 7 to 10 times a week to deal with the transient shoplifting, loitering, or soliciting in our lot. We have had a homeless man steal a bag of charcoal and light it to warm himself on the side of our building, posing a huge fire concern. And 3, we used to find needles and beer cans in our restrooms at least weekly. And then the last comment is all the way up here. And this one is from Stan and Carolyn Mason. This is the one that accompanies these photos. I'm going to show you the photos first. This is Purple Cliff 7820. Purple Cliff 7820. July 14th, 2020. Again, July 14th, 2020. A man walking down the street on 7/8/20. Okay. And I will see how far I can get through this. Again, all of these comments will be included as part of the documentation with the minutes. Ready? City councilors, we would like to voice our opinion relative to the above referenced project, which we are fully supportive based on the architectural plans, which we have had an opportunity to review. Additionally, we were led to believe that this council meeting was going to consider relocation of the Purple Cliffs homeless camp to an undeveloped site adjacent to the LPE substation and the Esparo housing project. If the relocation of the homeless camp is being considered, we strongly oppose this effort. For your consideration, Of prime importance in discussion of this matter is the fact homeless individuals have no stake in our community, momentarily or otherwise, nor are they retail consumers. Churches and other local community social help organizations have repeatedly attempted to solve this problem. The crux is many homeless individuals do not want to follow the rules that would be imposed. No drinking, no drugs. A more autonomous structure being preferred. Think Seattle or Portland. 1. Land use in Durango is not governed by zoning. Each project is required to go through a lengthy and potentially expensive process to determine the suitability relative to the subject property. There are many well-publicized meetings where the merits of a project are presented and where public input is encouraged. Ultimately, a determination made by city council members. I do not recall that any of this has happened relative to this proposal. 2. A recent article in the Durango Herald indicated that 4 sites were being considered for the location of a permanent homeless camp. The sites were never identified. This aspect of the project should have been well publicized and public input encouraged. Again, I have no recollection of being notified of this even as property owner located within 300 feet of the proposed project. From my perspective and personal experience, there are numerous reasons why a location of the facility in this manner must be vigorously opposed. Current events transpiring across the country are examples of what can happen when those with no tangible economic stake in a city are given carte blanche control. Chaos to the determinant of citizens with the real economic interest. The Durango Herald article seemed to imply that the prime consideration for this location of the camp was the proximity to Manna Soup Kitchen. This proves a false narrative given that most accounts, the current homeless camp located at the Purple Cliffs is functioning as intended. If this is the case, leave it there. Those with an interest in the community would be far better served if the Manna Soup Kitchen was relocated from the residential neighborhood in which it is presently located. 6. Proximity to downtown. Durango, with a tourist-based economy, is well aware of the serious perils of homeless people loitering, begging in the heart of its businesses upon which our economy is based. From the proposed camp location, it is a quick walk across the 9th Street Bridge to downtown. Schneider Park has become an unwanted destination for the homeless. 7.
Amber, that's 3 minutes.
Thank you. So the rest of this will be included, and that's Stan and Carolyn Mason, 235 Rock Point Drive, Durango, Colorado.
Thank you, Amber. And I might ask once again, Mitchell, if there's anybody else that's showed up for public comment while we have a open hearing.
If any of the attendees are here to speak to this topic, please utilize the raise hand function. I am not seeing any.
Okay, thank you, Mitchell. In which case, I'll close the public hearing and ask for the proponent to speak to council regarding some of the issues proposed in the public comment, as well as any questions from council. Who might we have on behalf of the proponent?
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Salkine, the Director of Housing Solutions, and we have Oriana Sanchez here and also Bridget Corse. So Oriana's with Blue Line Development and Bridget Corse is with Housing Solutions. We also have a member of our architectural team. And I guess first I wanted to just take us back to 2 completely different projects. We've been working on Aspara Apartments, now named Aspara Apartments, for about 7 years, working with city and council, city staff, the community, neighbors, to try to bring a community solution essentially to the issue of parts of our community who are homeless. So we have Esparo, and then a lot of the comments I believe were directed at a new proposal by a different organization regarding a permanent campground on an adjacent parcel. So I just wanted to be clear about the 2 different entities and the 2 completely different projects. I was worried about those being intermingled in people's minds about the one we are coming before the council today is strictly Aspara Apartments. It is a long-term asset to our community. Yes.
If I can, interrupt and reinforce your statement there that for the public, the action being proposed this evening is regarding leases and easement considerations for the Aspara Apartments, which is a permanent supportive homeless shelter, totally independent of the concept of the homeless camp near the cemetery that's been proposed under by the NINA group and subject of a different discussion, although the populations are intermixed. But this is clearly a different action being proposed this evening. And so, yeah, feel free not to have to answer questions regarding the homeless camp because you don't have anything to do with it. And I appreciate it, and we'll let you move on from there.
Okay. And if you have specific areas you want me to cover, I'm going to try to reorganize what I was planning to say to address the community comments. The Aspara Apartments is 41 bedroom units. It does provide on-site services with service staff, with a service staff budget. We worked really hard to get that in line. We have the physical facilities that are designed by a really great architecture team, and we have a member of that team here tonight if you have specific questions. So it does provide a large amount of community space for the purpose of engaging residents in programs. I know one of the questions was about medical and that sort of thing. So yes, services on site. Tenants do have a stake. They pay a portion of their income in rent. The state has come in with vouchers to essentially cover that gap for the cost of the property. So supportive service partners do include Access Health, Southwest Center for Independence, MANA, and other related organizations in the community. And they do cover things like behavioral and physical health support, employment, vocational services, access to healthy foods, things you would expect. The team itself, I just wanted to be clear, is Blue Line and Housing Solutions are co-developers. We've been talking about, apologize, that's my dog, been talking about this for 7 years, and in, let me close the door, in conversation with Blue Line for several years, and we think it's the best partnership. And frankly, I'm glad that it's taken a number of attempts to get this into its final vetted form, because I think we have a super solid project with those two co-developers. Blue Line, to answer one of the question, will be coming in as the property manager, and they're very experienced in that area. And I know Oriana could address that specifically if you would like. The project will be serving folks in that 30% of average median income or below, and it's a very underserved population in our region. This is one of the first permanent supportive, permanent supportive projects in our region. We do have a handful of units in the new Lumion 2 building. So there was a question about tenant selection, and I think the information in there was accurate. The tenant selection will be by the coordinated entry system. So it's a vetted tenant selection, and it's based on essentially vulnerability. And those folks would have come to the coordinated entry system by working with one of the community partners to be assessed for their vulnerability. The economic benefits of the project, I wanted to just touch on that. I think it was mentioned a couple times. Outside funding is paying for the, specifically for the building of the project, the build budget, essentially. That's highly competitive funding, federal, state, and large foundation funding, but mostly low-income housing tax credits. And we were successful because we were able to show them that the team had, through a lot of iterations, come to a really solid plan. In terms of economic benefits to the community, the construction project will bring in $6 million. And as we know, that money flows through and multiplies. There's the multiplier effect. There's a local contractor that's been selected. A local bank is providing the construction loan. So the local contractor and subs will be local residents of the community. We've partnered with the city, obviously, with a long-term land lease that has a nominal economic impact. And the economic savings to service providers and time in our community is a huge bonus. So hospitals and medical providers and the fire department, with services and folks being housed, we are going to be able to manage some of the activities that people are worried about. And, the research and other projects throughout the nation really show that, providing housing and services together in a well thought out, well funded project done correctly can be positive impact to the community and try to address some of the concerns that I know the public is concerned about. Personally, I'm proud of this project because it's been a long haul, right? So we've been talking about it for 6 years, and I think that with many resident input from some folks in the homeless community, surrounding counties, neighbors, local service providers, we have a very well vetted project. And I know tonight you're looking at leases and easements, but I wanted to try to address some of those specifics that we heard tonight. And I know Bridget Course is more been very involved with the project from our end, especially on the service side, like the service plan side. So maybe she could speak up real quick and address some of the details about how service providers will address, some of the needs we're hearing.
Hi, thank you. And I apologize for not having video, but I just want to address the fact that we, again, have been working on this project for about 7 years, working very closely with the city for the last 3 to 4 years. I've presented the concept of this project in public forums on numerous occasions. I've been happy to sit with anybody who's a member of this community who has questions that I can answer, including budgetary, ongoing operations, safety, etc. And I continue to be happy to do so, because not only am I developing this housing project, and it is housing, it's people's homes, it is not a shelter, it is not a camp. These will very much be individuals who are invested in our community, who want to participate and want to give back. They are family members, they are people that have been homeless on and off within the city of Durango, and the city of Durango has a huge deficit in affordable housing units. This is an answer to the ongoing issue of people not being able to obtain housing because they've been evicted, because they may have a criminal background, or because they don't have enough income to pay rent. So this is a solution that is a win-win for everybody. The other thing I would just ask is that if somebody pick up the phone and reach out to Housing Solutions, I can tell people whatever they need to hear. I can answer their questions. I can try to alleviate their concerns in any way. And again, Esparo intends to be a full operating apartment building that provides a sense of community, that gives back to Durango. And there's no intention of it being something that's going to be difficult for anybody. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, any other comments? Or do we? Yeah.
I'd like to, Mayor, if you don't mind.
Sure, Ariana.
So I do think that Bridget and Elizabeth both spoke very well about the project. I would just merely add that that your city has done a fantastic job in working to partner with Housing Solutions and to recognize that there is a homelessness problem everywhere. And I applaud Durango because I've actually pointed to Durango in other areas and other cities and counties to say what you all have done to put the zoning in place on the city campuses is just you're very much ahead of other areas, and I appreciate that very much. that supportive housing that we have worked very hard on, and Elizabeth and Bridget for much longer than on this Durango project, is a nationally recognized best practice in how we can support people who have been homeless to end that cycle of homelessness. And the way that we have budgeted for this, the operations will be paid for, as Elizabeth said, through the vouchers, which will cover operations. That's a 20-year contract with another 20-year renewal on top of it. The tax credit program also is a 40-year commitment. We have the long-term lease in place. We'll also have the state money for capital on the project, which also will have us put a deed onto the improvements onto the site to say that it has to remain affordable for 70 years. So this is a long-term investment in people and in this project. And I too will answer any questions that anyone will have about who Blue Line is, about this project, and how it's being funded, and or how it will run once it's open. And I won't take up any more of your time.
No problem. With that, I'd entertain questions from counselors. I'd be glad to start if we don't have any other questions. Okay, well then I'll ask Ms. Sanchez is available. I think one of the questions that's really inherent in the questioning tonight from the public was how this is managed. And as Council and Elizabeth know, I'm very familiar with tax credit projects and low-income affordable housing. And how does this permanent supportive housing project differ from a number of the affordable tax credit CHAPA funded projects or tax credit projects that we've been able to bring to our community, and what programs in particular are inherent in the permanent supportive housing that would alleviate some concerns about how things are managed and how these people are dealt with in the community?
Okay, great question, and it is something that it is a question that neighbors ask. The difference between when we have what we would say a workforce low-income housing tax credit project where we might be targeting people at 50% or 60% of area median income. The difference in supportive housing is we want to make sure that those people who have been living outside, when they come inside, that they have the supportive services on site to help them, get over the trauma that they have had living outside, because everyone does, that they can stabilize, and that we can help them find work, we can help them go back to school, we can help them get benefits, we can hook them up if they need to with physical health, dental health, mental or behavioral health needs. We provide that on site, and we provide those linkages to support services to make people successful. What we don't want to do is to have people cycle in and out of the supportive housing. They've already done that, and that's why they have found themselves living outside rather than in. And so what makes, and I will say that supportive housing is also a different property management model. So those companies who manage affordable housing and can do it really well, that's great. To manage supportive housing well, you have to understand that we are managing from a housing first perspective rather than a rent first perspective. And so our goal is to make people successful while also maintaining our asset. And we know it has to run. And so it's a different niche, if you will. And that's why we also come in to manage it, because we have that niche model.
Excellent. Any other questions of council?
Mayor, I wanted to make a comment or two, if I can. I think it was interesting listening to the public testimony and the letters that came in relative to this issue. I've been addressing this issue since I've been a counselor almost 4 years, this has been the top of mind issue. And as I see it, and as we've understood it, this particular piece of the puzzle of trying to put together transitional housing for folks that can't find housing in our community is such a critical piece in the community that helps people find a way into a more supportive and sustainable future in the community. It really is the antithesis of a lot of the descriptions that you found in the public testimony in terms of the impacts of homelessness on the community that people find averse to the enjoyment of their neighborhoods and so forth. And so, as we've understood this, it really has been one of the really critical pieces and solutions to get some of those impacts alleviated through the communities that they're impacting now. And I understand that there's some conflation there between the two issues of a camp shelter type of arrangement versus this long-term supportive housing. But certainly we have discussed this in multiple public venues and multiple public sessions. We committed to this lease opportunity prior to this. This is just the realization of the project coming to fruition at this point, and our commitment was necessary for them to get the funding for the project. And so, hopefully the public will understand that we're not talking about that other type of use. We're getting a good window into some of the things we'll hear, I guess, at that particular point if we do engage in that conversation. But I'm excited to see this. And my only real question is really of staff, because I know that the VOA project with the senior housing was a realization of a fairly significant percentage of the 2040 goals in our housing plan relative to affordable, sustainable housing in the community. And this additional 40 units would be another big piece of that. And I don't know, Kevin, if you have that information at this time, but I'd sure be curious to know percentage-wise how far along we are with the realization of this project toward our sustainability housing goals in our community for that 2040 plan. Thanks.
And I don't have those numbers available for you tonight, Councilor Bettine, but we can certainly circle back on that and provide that in the pretty near future here. Obviously, 41 units, it sounds like 41 bedrooms is going to have a significant impact on that portion of the continuum of housing that we haven't been able to address up to this point.
Thanks.
We can put a little more clarity to that for you.
That'd be great.
Any other questions from council of the developer? There was a question regarding the low barrier aspect of this facility, and perhaps if you could describe that and how that is managed in your management plan,
Sure.
And I might also, it's maybe unfair, but we do have 8 or 9 units at Lumion that are also under the permanent supportive housing, and so or program. So it's our experiment, if you will, in the permanent supportive housing type, and it's been met with some success and some issues. And I personally, I think I look at that, and yours is clearly permanent supportive that you can manage and deal with that population in its entirety. And at Lumion, they're mixed in with other affordable housing folks that are, in many cases, families, young families, single mothers, et cetera. And so I think that's been part of the problem there. Whereas your 40 plus units are going to be specifically folks that you can manage and provide those wraparound projects to. So if you can talk about that a little bit and the low barrier aspect of it.
Yeah,
Sure.
so this is I'll just go first, Oriana, and then I'll let you finish. So this is Bridget. We provide permanent supportive housing every day in the regular programs that we provide. It's just in a scattered site model where we pay a subsidy for people and then they go rent an apartment in the community. What we found is that they're not always successful because they burn a bridge with the landlord. And the landlord, of course, rightfully so, doesn't want to give them a second, third, or fourth chance to comply. This model with the property management and the funding sources allows us to give people with multiple barriers the ability to work multiple times to try to adapt to living in community. Number two, we do have overnight staff, and our intention with the staffing plan is to front load the staffing in the first several years, because, you know, my dream would be that once we have people stabilized, they'll want to stay, and they'll want to stay to a point where they're ready to move on to a different type of housing option, not back to homelessness. We plan on having staffing on site 5 days per week, overnight security and staffing. And then when you talk about the low barrier model, it is people's homes. It's just like if you or I were to sign a lease. We're not a treatment I just can't convey this too much. We're not a homeless shelter. We're not a treatment facility. We're not a camp. We are people's homes, and they have the same rights and responsibilities that you and I have when we sign a lease. So if they're selling drugs or using illegal drugs on site, that is going to be cause for eviction, because you can't do that in the housing that we're providing. But are we going to ask people to come to a breathalyzer before they enter their home at night as an adult? We're not going to do that. It's just the same as if you or I were to sign a lease. Does that make sense?
I think that answers that question too. And there was also a issue of on-site management in terms of 24/7 management on-site.
Yes.
If you could address that, that'd be great.
Property management during the day, service staff during the day with staggered hours to cover Saturdays and evenings, and overnight security staff kind of not really doing full on kind of work with people, but definitely covering emergencies, making sure people aren't coming and going. That is the staffing model that we have in place at this point in time. And we have a budget to cover most of those funds, at least for the first 5 years. You know, funders can be tricky, but you know, we've dedicated Housing Solutions as a nonprofit partner. Our portion of the profit, the cash flow that comes back to the project, we can reinvest that in services because we don't need to make a profit. So this is an ideal situation where you have a local nonprofit doing the development and partnership with somebody who is really skilled, like Blue Line.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah, we have modeled a lot of the cash flow going back into services every year.
Excellent. Any other questions? I'll ask for a motion from council if there's
I'll take that on, Dean. I'll move to direct the interim city manager to finalize and execute the lease agreements, approve the described easements, and direct the city attorney to conduct first reading of the ordinances, authorizing the leases and granting the easements later in the meeting agenda under introduction of ordinances. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Could I just say something under discussion, if I may?
Surely.
I just wanted to recognize the public comment and the concerns, but also to recognize the hard work of this public-private partnership and the previous city council that went before this and making some of the decisions to make this happen. It's really bringing this to fruition, and it does address needed homes in this community. And it is really about making a home for people who might not otherwise have this opportunity. So thank you for all your hard work, both the previous city councils and the public-private partnerships involved.
Thank you for your comments, and I might reiterate that as well. It has been a long road to get to this point, so thanks so much. Well, it's been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter?
Yes.
And Mayor Brookie?
Yes. Okay, moving on. That was our legislative and policy related hearing. We have 3 quasi-judicial hearings, starting with 9.2.1, which is a public hearing to consider the Walecki Hamel boundary adjustment. May we have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Mayor Brookie. This is Mark Williams from Community Development. And as you said, this is the Walecki Hamel preliminary minor subdivision. Can everyone see the screen? Yes. Hello?
Yeah, we're good, Mark. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is a vicinity map of the project that's in question. We're in the sort of the transition south end of the Needham neighborhood, a little bit north of the Crestview neighborhood. There are 2 lots that are addressed off Hermosa Avenue with Forest Avenue on the west side, to the rear of the lots. So this is a preliminary subdivision, any minor subdivision. It's a minor subdivision because it's fewer than 6 lots. And even though this is a very minor request, it still has to go through the same process as a more complicated project. This is a complete view of the plat, and these are the 2 properties. And I have a close-up of the plat so you can actually see the details, but now you get a sense of what goes into the plat and its surroundings. And this is the request that the applicants are making. This is the original house. It was built in 1958. And then the house to the south was built in 1974. When the house to the south was built, it was built so that a little bit of the driveway was actually over the property line onto the northern lot. And that's the way it's functioned for 46 years, I think, since the house down here was built. There's actually a fence now that's been here for some time. It's a chain link fence. So the properties function as though this is the lot boundary, although it's actually not. And obviously it'd be advantageous for the house to the south to have all of their driveway on their own lot. So the request is to move the property boundary to reflect the fence line and the way the properties have actually been used for so long. And the width of the change ranges from about 4.5 feet or maybe a little bit more on the east side of the property, and then narrowing down to about 18 inches on the west side of the property. Project complies with the subdivision section in the LUDC, which is 6363. After a preliminary plan, a final plan will be resubmitted to the department for a final review before Mylars can be made. Staff has received no public comment on this project. And one thing to note is the southern lot is less than 6,000 square feet, but will actually be increased in size due to the subdivision. And the northern lot is still substantially larger than 6,000 square feet. The Planning Commission recommended approval of this at its 4-0 at its June 29th, 2020 meeting. And there's no fiscal impact to the city. And our recommended motion is that of the Planning Commission that the City Council by motion approve the Walecki Hamel preliminary minor subdivision, direct the applicant to prepare the final plan in Mylars, and authorize the mayor to sign the final plan Mylars once all necessary revisions are made. So that is all I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any questions for staff before we open the public hearing? Seeing none, I'll open the public hearing and ask if we have anybody in the queue for public comment.
We do have a couple attendees, but no one has raised their hands. So if anybody is here to speak to this public hearing, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Mitchell.
I am not seeing anybody.
Okay, with that, we'll close the public hearing and move into questions of council for staff. Any questions for council? With that, if not, then I'd entertain a motion.
I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the Walecki Hamel preliminary minor subdivision, direct the applicant to prepare the final plan and Mylars, and authorize the mayor to sign the final plan Mylars once all necessary revisions are made.
Thank you, Councilor Baxter. And we have a second. So it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
And Dean, is this the one you recused yourself from?
No. No, that'll be next or soon. But if not, then I'll ask for the roll call, please.
Councilor Noseworthy,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter,
Yes.
Councilor Bettine,
Yes.
and Mayor Bricky.
Yes. Thank you. And we'll move on to 9.2.2, which is a public hearing to if I can get to consider the Waymire rezone and boundary adjustment. Maybe we have a staff report, please.
Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself, so I'll sign out. And then if the city manager would text me, I'll try and sign back in when it's done, okay?
Excellent. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Dan Armentano with the Community Development Department. Bear with me and I will share my screen. Okay, so this is another pretty simple boundary adjustment. I'll start with an overview. The applicant is Phil Waymire of 915 Hidden Valley Circle. He's proposed to purchase a 15-foot wide strip of land from his neighbor to the west to enlarge his parcel. The goal is to build an addition to his home in the form of a single bay garage. Again, according to the LUDC, this boundary adjustment needs to be processed as a preliminary minor subdivision. And because the neighboring parcel and Mr. Waymire's property have different zoning designations, there's a need for a rezone as well for that transferred strip of land to avoid a split zoning situation. Here's a site aerial from the south. This is kind of a close-up of the subject property. This is Hidden Valley Circle, which is a little west of the Needham subdivision. The property line in question is to the left of the subject parcel here, and you can only see a small portion of the neighboring parcel to the west. It's a much larger property, which we'll see on the plat here. So this is 1,000 Hidden Valley Circle to the left, and it's a over 10 acre parcel. So the strip of land that's being transferred is really minor in terms of the impact to this property. And it's, of course, enough for Mr. Waymire to build the addition that he would like to put on his house. Received essentially no public comment on this request. The only comment that was submitted was from the neighboring property owner, Jeffrey Bork, who is transferring that 15-foot strip to Mr. Waymire. And there was no public comment during the June 29th Planning Commission hearing. To go into some review criteria, start with the comp plan. The future land use densities for both parcels still complies with the existing uses. Of course, there's no change in use for either property. The LUDC criteria for minor subdivisions and rezones mostly don't apply to this simple of a request. But the proposed lot sizes do comply with LUD standards for the EN4C and the rural agricultural zone. The boundary adjustment doesn't conflict with any existing utility configurations, and there's no adverse impacts to the public. And again, the rezone is really just a formality, so the requirements mostly don't apply. Those that do are met by this request. Planning Commission heard this request at its June 29th meeting and recommended approval on a 4-0 vote. And there's no fiscal impact of this proposal. So to conclude, the proposal aligns with the LUDC requirements for a minor subdivision and rezone, and staff is recommending approval. And I've got a motion on screen for you guys. It's the same motion that's in the agenda documentation as well. So can take any questions. Yep.
Any questions of the staff at this time? If not, I'll open the public hearing and ask Mitchell if we have anybody for public comment.
I do not see anybody raising their hands.
All righty. Given none, we'll close the public hearing and ask for any further discussion or entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the Wymeyer boundary adjustment. Whoops, it just went away. Fortunately, I have it right here. And move on with the findings and conditions described in the Planning Commission staff report and minutes from the June 29th, 2020 hearing, and authorize the mayor to sign the final plat Mylars following the completion and approval of the final platting requirements as determined by city staff, and direct the city attorney to prepare the rezone ordinance for first reading at the next council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Maybe we have a roll call, please.
Absolutely. Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter?
Yes.
And Mayor Brookie?
Yes. And I might note that 3 votes constitutes a quorum, so motion passed. With that, I'll move on to item 9.2.3, which is a public hearing to consider the GA rezone and the Barker GA boundary adjustment and lot consolidation preliminary plan. And I will ask, I will recuse myself and ask Mayor Pro Tem Baxter to ask for comment and open the public hearing, and I'll mute out at this point and mute back in for the next item.
Thank you, Dean. Amber, have you notified Councilor Bettine that he can come back in?
And I believe Chris is back with us.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna just check and make sure I can actually see him, because I don't want to start this. There he is. Okay, I don't want to start it without a quorum. So this is item number 9.2.3, a public hearing to consider the, and I may pronounce this wrong, Guay rezoning and Barker Guay boundary adjustment and lot consolidation preliminary plat. Can we hear from staff, please?
Yes, this is Craig Roser with the City Community Development Department. Can everybody hear me and see the screen? Okay, this is another pretty simple proposal. It's almost exactly like the one Dan just did. This is involving 3 properties, 3 existing parcels, 2 that are currently owned by Dan and Carol, and it's pronounced GA, and 1 property that's owned by the Rod Barker and Lori Barker Revocable Trust. The properties are addressed as 405 West 29th Street for the GA property and 7 Carroll Drive for the Barker property. The issues under consideration tonight are replatting the 3 parcels to consolidate the GA properties into a single parcel, and to adjust the common boundary with the Barker property to add more area to the Barker proposal. Along with this, we're rezoning the GA properties from the current zoning of RA, Rural Agricultural, to EN4B to avoid a split zone situation with what will be the reconfigured Barker property, and also to make the zoning of the GA property more consistent with the rest of the neighborhood and the land use plan. This is vicinity that shows the properties in question. The 405 designations are the 2 GA properties. Set the property of the Barkers is addressed as number 7. You can see the red line separating the 3 properties, the 2 GA properties and the Barker property. The process is a public hearing. Both the rezoning and the boundary adjustment require public hearings. We're holding a combined hearing on both issues. The rezoning will be implemented by council ordinance, and the final boundary adjustment lot consolidation plat will be reviewed and approved administratively by staff prior to authorizing the final plat to be recorded. From a rezoning standpoint, this shows the zoning of the property. You can see the 2 GA properties that are totally different zone than the surrounding neighborhood and the Barker property. And so this rezoning, besides making the properties consistent with the designations, are going to avoid a split zone designation also. That's part of the rezoning analysis. Again, rezone the undesirable split zone, zoning the properties more compatible of the properties in better conformance with the plan. And the rezoning does meet all the review criteria, and we've had no public comment on the rezoning. This is the boundary adjustment plat. again showing the three properties. What's going to happen is this red line will be eliminated, and this portion of what is now the GA property will be combined with the Barker property, and this portion of the second platted parcel of the GA property will just be combined with their remaining property. As far as the analysis of the boundary adjustment and the lot consolidation, the platting will reduce the total number of lots from 3 to 2, increasing the Barker property size while reducing the GA property. The resultant lots all meet the dimensional requirements of the EN4B zone. The plat is in general conformance with the pertinent subdivision requirements of the city. The subdivision will not alter the character of the residential neighborhood, and we've again received no public comments on this. The Planning Commission did review both of these items at their regular meeting on June 29th. There was no public comment on either, and following brief presentation by staff and brief commission discussion, they did recommend approval of both the projects. This is the recommendation that they took with the rezoning and the findings. This is the recommendation on the boundary adjustment. Again, the consistency, the conditions are all consistent and relatively simple. We are recommending that the council do approve both of the GA rezoning and the Barker GA lot consolidation and boundary adjustment. We're recommending separate motions. This is the motion on the council action, again, to approve the GA rezoning subject to the findings reflected in the Planning Commission minutes and staff report of June 29th, and direction to the city attorney to prepare the enacting ordinance at the for first reading at the next meeting. And with the boundary adjustment, the same thing, to recommend approval subject to the conditions and findings recommended by the Planning Commission, and authorize the mayor to complete, to sign the Mylars upon completion of all final platting requirements as determined by staff. Dan Burkhart with Burkhart Planning is representing the applicants, and I think he is attending the meeting if he has any questions or any comments, or if you have any questions of him. But again, this is a really simple proposal.
Thank you, Craig. Did Mr. Burkhart want to make any announcements or make any statements?
I'm good.
Yeah, hi, Dan. Was that a no or a yes?
That was a hello. Sorry. No, I do not wish to make comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Then I'll open up the public comment portion of this hearing. Mitchell, do we have any public comment people?
We do still have some attendees with us, but no one has raised their hands. So if anyone in the attendee list is here to speak for this public hearing, please raise your hand. I am not seeing anybody.
Thank you, Mitchell. So with no public comment, I'll close the public comment section. And is there any discussion or questions from council? Okay, I'm not hearing any, but I can't also, because we're sharing, I can't see. Okay, great. Then, yes.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry, but because we're recommending two separate motions, I'll leave them up on the screen one at a time. This is the recommended action on the rezoning.
Yes, thank you. I was just going to mention that to remind someone. So if someone wants to make a motion, there's your first motion.
I'll move to approve the GA rezoning subject to the findings reflected in the Planning Commission staff report and minutes of June 29, 2020, and direct the city attorney to prepare the enacting ordinance for the first reading at the next city council meeting.
Second.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion by council? No? Okay, great. May I have a roll call, please, Ben?
Definitely. Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
And Mayor Pro Tem Baxter?
Yes. And do I hear a second motion?
Sure. I'll move to approve the Barker GA boundary adjustment and lot consolidation preliminary plat subject to the findings and conditions reflected in the Planning Commission staff report and minutes of June 29, 2020, and authorize the mayor to sign the final plat Mylars upon completion of all final platting requirements as determined by city staff.
Second.
Any council discussion? All right, Mr. Florine, another roll call, please.
Counselor Bettine,
Yes.
Counselor Noseworthy,
Yes.
and Mayor Pro Tem Baxter.
Yes. And if Ms. Blake would like to let Mayor Brookie know he can come back in, then we can move on to 9.2.4.
I'm with you.
Oh, hello, great.
And thank you. And 9.2, we're entering into the administrative portion of our agenda this evening. And 9.2.4.1 is a city update. And we'll talk also about our virtual meeting extension. So Amber Blake, interim city manager, could you give us an update?
You're on.
Muted, Amber.
Thank you. Sorry about that. I have a brief update this evening. We spent most of our time in preparation on the financials this meeting. I would like council to know that I have come to the point where I'm comfortable in removing our staff from furlough. This Friday will be the final furlough for our staff, and we'll be moving forward with our standard 5-day-a-week schedule starting next week. That does have an impact on the council because Dirk and I would like to request that we come off of furlough as well. And we will need a nod from council to make sure that you're okay with that. So we can leave that open for discussion. Dirk, do we need formal action on that?
I was going to ask that exact question.
As I recall, the amendment to our contract stated that it would be effective as long as the other employees were on furlough. So if we do, we can follow up with that at the next meeting.
Okay.
I have a question, Amber.
Yes.
Not that it's a significant amount of money, but at the same time, should we be bringing council back from furlough?
We can definitely bring council back from furlough. We'll adjust the pay stubs back, but I do think that that is fair if the rest of us are returning from furlough. So does council have any concerns with that?
Well, Amber, that I think for the public to know, it's based on our sales tax data and collections to date, which are not approaching the estimated loss of revenue that we originally based that, the assumptions that we made that furlough action on. So we're comfortable at this point. Not to say it's forever. If COVID is still active in our community and we still have potential impact, but it seems appropriate at this time based on the sales tax revenues we've encountered.
Yeah, good news. Thanks for getting everybody off furlough and getting everybody back to work.
Thank you.
And I would say it's also due to the fact that you've done a good job cutting expenses too. It's not just personnel. So I think that those expense cuts are what allow the furloughs to expire. And so I congratulate you on that also.
And I support this action.
Thank you. And for to our community and all of our staff, I would just like to formally thank the staff for the challenging situation that they experienced with that 20% cut in their hours and their pay. And thank you to the public for bearing with us as services slowed down, and hopefully the impacts weren't too bad. But we're ready to be back at work full time, that's for sure.
Excellent. So was there a determination whether we need formal action? It sounded like not. So we just concur with your assessment and your action. So
I would say concur for now, and I will double check the amendment that we did. And if we need to amend it, we'll bring it at the next meeting.
Great. Thank you, Dirk and Amber. Amber, were you going to talk about our virtual meetings as well?
So we put this item on the agenda just to make sure that we had another opportunity to communicate to the public that the council suggested at the study session last week that we continue virtual meetings for an indeterminate amount of time. And so this was just a notification to the public. It's important to communicate what we're doing with our meeting schedule. The information is up on the website. So that was the purpose of that item.
Amber, can I, just for the public to be clear also, I listened to some of the comments about really calling for us to come back in public meetings. And so I sent a letter to you and council asking about the feasibility of possibly doing a blend of a Zoom in public meeting sometime in the future. And maybe you want to share some of the complications that would be involved with that. Because I think the public needs to also know that we're exploring how to get back in a public manner, but also providing for people that may not want to come in public, and it's complicated. Can you give a quick update on, what you found in response to my request?
Definitely. So staff researched as to whether or not we could do a hybrid meeting where there was an opportunity for in-person and Zoom at the same time. And for our meetings that are televised via DGov, this is not an option that we can provide. So what we can do is we can maintain what we currently have, where public comment can be taken via letter, via person on the phone, and via the Zoom tie-in. If members of the public have other ideas of ways to provide public comment, we are definitely interested in hearing those. And we cannot move forward to another location that's larger than the chamber, especially for the meetings that are televised via DGov, because of the production and the infrastructure that we need to be able to live stream the meetings through the production room at City Hall. So that's not something that we can do at the library or another facility.
I might add to that the real concern for exposure. And Councilor Youssef is not here this evening, but she's expressed her concern for her own exposure and her exposure to her family, as well as exposing staff and the number of people we would have to take back to a real setting until there's a better solution, more testing and so forth, that we've met better metrics in our community before we open up for this further consideration. So respecting that, I would say we keep on with our tact of virtual meetings and do the best we can, and certainly be as open and transparent as we can possibly be. So.
I do have a question. Amber, have you finished with your presentation, or will you be talking about any kind of mask situation and update?
So I can give an update on the masks. The city is procuring a large number of the paper masks to be provided to the Business Improvement District ambassadors, as well as Visit Durango, and as well as our park rangers. Our park rangers will now be carrying masks with them to provide to individuals on the Animas River Trail and at the river put-ins and the other trails, soft service trails, as they go out and conduct business as a ranger in our open space. For folks that cannot maintain the 6-foot distance and don't have a mask, we'll be reminding them of the public health order, both locally and the order from the governor. And we'll be providing masks. So we're doing that, working closely with Visit Durango on additional signage. So new signage that can go up downtown and in businesses around Durango, reminding folks of the mask order and the need for face covering. And then we're also looking at the sidewalk decals. So I'm waiting to get art back from Visit Durango, and we hope to have those out in the near future. So that is the current mask update.
Thank you. I do have one question about Mr. Viner's suggestion that you read at the beginning. So you are addressing the large signs in places, but his comment, and I see it when I walk down Main Avenue, his comment is that we've got the bump outs going and having people be away from the curb so when you're walking by, but there's also furniture on the sidewalk. And then so can you consider whether or not you'll be looking into his suggestion about the appropriateness of furniture that's not part of a bump out being used on the sidewalk?
So I think what we are going to need to do in that situation, I can't address that today. And again, sure, he did request that the city council speak with one voice. So I'd be interested to hear if council this evening directs staff to go out and do an assessment of the locations and the furniture. What I am very comfortable doing is ensuring that we have that ADA accessible throughway on the sidewalk. And I do know that we do have staff that's downtown monitoring to make sure that there's not items in the travel way for ADA compliance. But that 4-foot travel way that's required for ADA does not meet that 6-foot requirement. So if the council this evening would like us to take and reassign our staff members to go out and do that assessment and make those changes, I'm more than happy to do that.
Could it be just something that we requested the bid look into, since they're kind of running that program down there and setting it up, so that the staff doesn't take their time to do that? Seems like a reasonable thing to check out.
Yeah, I would agree with Councilor Bettina. And there are businesses that have both a bump out and furniture on the sidewalk. And then when you have people with their dog and everything, it gets pretty crowded in some cases walking in. You know I have to step out into the street on more than one occasion. Yeah. I'd appreciate just an assessment of it.
Okay.
I agree. I think it's the purview of the bid, but more the COVID recovery group to really look at the overall situation and the success and failures of the bump outs. Excuse me. It was proposed that we also establish some mask-free zones, similar to our dismount zones, and add appropriate signage. So I think that's a topic for the enforcement committee of the policy group, as well as the COVID recovery group as well. So
I think you meant mask required zones, not mask free zones.
Exactly, it came out wrong, the wrong windpipe. So exactly, mask required zones.
And if I may, this is a question for you, Amber, but Dee might also have the information. I was looking at the San Juan Basin Public Health stats today, and I noticed that 15 people were tested in La Plata who don't live here, who tested positive. And I'm really concerned about what's the positivity rate of people who don't live here, they're coming in, they're getting tested. Is that do we have a higher percentage of people maybe visiting here testing positive than we realize? And the same thing with Archuleta County. They have 24 people that tested positive who don't live here. And again, that seems like it could be a disproportionate positivity rate. And I'd be curious if you don't have that information, if you can bring it up there through the policy group and bring that back to the public, so we have a little more information to work with.
We can definitely bring that back to policy tomorrow. We did talk about testing on Monday. That was not part of the statistics. We did talk about positivity rate and testing numbers of individuals who live outside of the jurisdiction of San Juan Basin Public Health. So we can ask for some additional, more fine detail data that you just requested. But at this point in time, that hasn't been reported out to the policy group in that format.
Yeah, I would say, Barbara, anecdotally, I think the positivity rate should be expected to be higher, because obviously these people are coming from from areas with higher positivity rates than we've encountered historically in Durango. So, but the question really becomes, what do we do about it? And so I think that's the real question for the policy group, to figure out what kind of measures we can take to protect ourselves from that. What I witnessed downtown today, which is more Texas license plates than Colorado license plates in downtown Durango. So, it's a real concern, and we can. San Juan Basin Health is tracking that as a separate population, so it is easy to determine the positivity rates of those out non-residents, we can say. So, thank you for that question.
So, Dean, I would then request that if you're going to have this conversation at the policy group, that you report back and inform council about what ideas there might be, what possibilities, what direction we might take, if any, concerning this.
Sure. And and would take any suggestions from council as to take to the policy group as to any action that they would propose to the policy group.
Sorry, Mayor Brookie, Councilor or Mayor Pro Tem Baxter, can you clarify what exactly you are asking for us to take to the policy group? I want to make sure that we are asking the right question.
Mayor Brookie mentioned about having a conversation with the policy group about what they might do to deal with the situation that we might be having groups of people coming in who have higher positivity rates. If there was something that they might consider, we might need to do about that. That's just to know what your conversation is and what the response is.
Yeah.
And just for the public to have a sense of it, if 15 people were tested positive in La Plata County who don't live here, and we only took 30 tests, because we don't know the number of tests we've taken, that's a high percentage of 50% testing positive. So I'm just trying to get a sense of what that looks like. And if we have sense of, if it is more people that are visiting, are they concentrating in an area such as Main Avenue, which then may want us to really step up that mask zone that has been proposed. So that's what I'm trying to get a sense of, is how concentrated and what is that rate that we're seeing from the testing.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect that they'd be able to pinpoint it as to where those people are hanging out specifically. I think it is interesting to know that there's more in Archuleta County, i.e. Pagosa Springs, than there is in Durango. And having yesterday spent a little bit of time in Pagosa, I can understand why that is. And they haven't enacted the level of mask ordinance enforcement and behavior that we have in Durango. They haven't enjoyed this level of good citizen behavior that we have here, and I can expect that that would be true, that we have less than Archuleta County at this point, but it's only going to get more intense, is my take on this whole thing, but we'll report back, and thank you for that. Amber, is there any other items on your?
We have one other item.
Okay.
And that is discussion and possible action related to an interim CRC council liaison.
Thank you. I was just going to move into that, but didn't want to cut you short, but that is the next topic. And do you want to introduce that topic for starters, and then we'll have a discussion?
So at the study session last week, there was a discussion related to appointing an interim liaison from the city council to the Community Relations Commission until the point that potential amendments could be made to the establishing document of that commission, and further discussion could be had at the council retreat. I do know that Councillor Noseworthy has been attending the CRC meetings and has shown interest, and this is up for council to determine who the liaison is and have discussion and action.
Thank you, Amber. And I might start the discussion with the, we did receive both verbal and written request of the CRC to have a council liaison, and I think that's a worthy. I appreciate their need for and applaud their desire to have better communication. I think is the root cause for that request, better communication with council, and so I appreciate that. In the week that we've had since this topic came up at study session, I still continue to wonder if, based on the purpose, the original purpose was of the CRC was to be the city's mediator, essentially, is one of the functions that I perceive that they would be useful for in hearing and communicating and perhaps resolving issues of discrimination of any kind in our community. So therefore there was no council liaison assigned to them in the initial bylaws for that, in the organization of the CRC. And I wonder if, I'm not opposed to it, never wouldn't be, but I always wonder if the communication and the types of topics that are entertained by the CRC would be in any way stifled by the presence of a city councilor at that board meeting or at that commission meeting for any of their topics. And I would reach out to Councillor Noseworthy to maybe describe how she would feel about that, given the fact that you've attended a few of those meetings and put yourself in that situation. Do you think the conversation has changed, or if the adding?
Actually, I've only attended one formal meeting of the CRC, and then I've attended 2 listening sessions. So that has kind of been it. And when I attended the formal meeting, I didn't realize it was a commission and had different, it was set up in a different manner. So it was one of those cases where, but to answer your question, you know, I think that's a consideration for the chair and vice chair of the board. If there's an issue that comes up that they felt people might speak freer without a liaison, you know, then you recuse yourself or step, you know, in some way. But I also recognize that, and I looking to the city attorney, that I believe it would require a change to the resolution that created this commission back in, I think, 2012.
I believe that's the case. And Dirk, do you want to just confirm that?
Yes, if I could unmute myself. Yes, the idea would be to make changes to those bylaws. And also, I have heard some other suggestions as to items that may also need to be clarified or changed, including the one just mentioned by the mayor that would actually maybe spell out processes a little bit more in terms of how they might operate. So I would think that we would take some time here to look into those formal changes, maybe ask the CRC to make some suggestions on their own, and then look to make those changes maybe in, say, 60 days from now when we've had some time to do that. So we would be looking at this as an interim appointment pending a final change in the documents. I would also comment that I think a liaison is not really a voting member of the board. Is there more for communication purposes. So, you know, if the board itself were to undertake some sort of mediation activity, then the council or who was acting as liaison, I think, could indeed, as Councilor Noseworthy indicated, take into consideration what their role ought to be in any of those situations.
Thank you, Dirk. And that's no different than really any other board or commission in the role. So I would support this interim measure. I think that's a good advice to work for a couple months and we'll see what other considerations might be taken into account. But honor their request for liaison by providing a interim appointment.
And I will note that their next meeting is tomorrow afternoon.
So it's timely. So, all right. Well, should I ask if you're available for tomorrow afternoon? Or if you would, consider.
I'm happy if someone else is interested in serving. I'm happy to step aside, but otherwise I would be honored to be a liaison with this group and work with them.
I would nominate Councilor Noseworthy as the interim liaison for the CRC.
Well, we have a nomination. And any further discussion or
I need a second.
Correct. or any discussion either way. So Chris, I don't know if you want to weigh in.
My only comment is I talked to Christina Rinderly when I was looking at this item on my agenda today because she was the mayor when this commission was formed. And I was just curious what the reason was that they didn't have a liaison at that time. Her recollection was that it was essentially based upon two factors. One was that the council at the time was all committed to their boards and commission duties, and that the council then did not feel that this additional commission could be borne by the council at the time. I think there is an issue here if it's a temporary thing, fine. But, the future council may feel an obligation once you appoint this to put somebody in this role. And now this is an additional, mathematical problem of how many of these meetings can council reasonably attend. So that was what they contended with. And it was in conjunction with the other thing that I think the mayor alluded to, which was that there was a perception that some of the the folks that the commission most was designed to benefit, that might have been marginalized or persecuted in our community, may not feel comfortable approaching that group if there was somebody who had a political position within the community. And so those were the two factors. And I think, from my view, those are pretty reasonable factors. I'm not, I want to honor the commission and their desire to have more communication. Obviously, we've had a challenge having communications in this pandemic reality, and we haven't had our breakfast meetings and so forth, and haven't had regular communication. I sometimes wonder if that would be the best thing, to have more communication with that commission, especially as some of the issues have percolated in our community and broader with that particular commission, if that would solve that issue instead of having one designated person who may have their own particular interests and biases.
And I would echo that in the sense that although I am in favor of an interim position at this point to foster that communication and have a few months of dialogue here while we determine the purpose and the effectiveness of a liaison in communication with that group, that we not commit to a long-term liaison relationship, because I do think, as Chris just stated, if we were in normal times and we had better communication via our breakfast meetings and so forth with the commission, that might be a better forum, but that's to be explored, I think, over the next few weeks and incorporated into the changes that Dirk has alluded to. So that's all I have to say about it. I respect both sides and think that it might be beneficial for an interim in the short term, but evaluate whether that's the long-term solution.
I'm fine to second interim, as long as it's an interim and we haven't made a final decision on the length of time that would exist.
Well, in that case, it's been moved and seconded, and maybe we have a roll call, please.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter?
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
And Mayor Brookie?
Yes. Thank you so much. And with that, we move on to item 11, introduction of ordinances. 11.1 is an ordinance granting various utility and other easements to Aspara Apartments, LLLP, and Housing Solutions of the Southwest related to development of the permanent supportive housing project and declaring an effective date. Is staff, Dirk, you want to take this one?
I will take this one. I think this is ordinance 2020-09. And this one flows obviously from the earlier public hearing. This is the one dealing with easements and so forth. And as you can see, there are some legal descriptions attached of the proposed easements. The final easements will be provided prior to the second reading. We're trying to move this forward to get Housing Solutions and their partners in a place where they can break ground as soon as possible. So those are going to take some fine tuning, but we'll treat this as an authorization to move forward, complete those in the next 2 weeks and bring them back in final form prior to second reading.
Thank you, Dirk. Given that, any further discussion by council? Any clarifications from staff? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-9.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilor Noseworthy?
Yes.
Councilor Bettine?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Baxter?
Yes.
And Mayor Brookie?
Yes. Thank you. And we'll move on to 11.2, which is the sister component of this action, which is an ordinance authorizing a ground lease between the City of Durango and Aspara Apartments, LLLP, and amendment and an amendment to an existing lease between the city with Housing Solutions of the Southwest and declaring an effective date.
Yes, Mayor, this will be ordinance 2020-10. And you will also note that this ordinance calls for a final form of lease. We have been engaged in some negotiations with the Aspara Apartments regarding the final terms of the lease. I would say we are 95+% of the way there. Again, the intent here is to allow this as authorization to move forward. I will work with Kevin Hall and the interim city manager to finalize those terms and have a final lease available for council review prior to the final reading of this ordinance. The intent is to do that, of course, in 2 weeks to keep this project moving forward again, so that they can break ground and make progress on construction this fall. Also, there will be two documents. One will be the new lease with the Esparo Apartments and the revised lease, or actually a revised legal description with the existing lease with Housing Solutions of the Southwest to free up the property to allow Esparo to use the parcel that was described earlier by Vicki in her presentation.
And Dirk, for clarification, this one action will cover both amendment as well as the ground lease. The new ground.
So yes, we decided to put both leases in one ordinance and then the easements in a separate ordinance. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Any further questions of Dirk regarding this? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2020-10.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
I already did.
Okay, it's a rush. I'll let you guys sort that out, but it has been moved and seconded, and maybe we have a roll call, please.
We're going to give Mayor Pro Tem Baxter the second. Mayor Pro Tem Baxter.
Yes.
Councilor Bettine.
Yes.
Councilor Noseworthy.
Yes.
And Mayor Brookie.
Yes, thank you so much. And as we approach our, for councilors and the public out there to understand that council is now approaching our 6th hour of Zoom conferences, we'll start council reports and actions. And I'll start with 12.1, which is a discussion regarding future executive sessions. I asked that this be added to the agenda to do some scheduling here. And we have actually the need for 2 executive sessions. The first one being related to our city manager search. And that is an executive discussion to have, executive session to have discussion about our second round of candidate rankings. And secondly, we have a need for an executive session for dealing with legal matters relating to the ongoing case with our former finance director, in which we will confer with our city attorney. My thought on this is that we would schedule these executive sessions 1 week from tonight, immediately following our study session. I know that's a burden on everybody, but we simply need to get these things done and move forward. So is there any thoughts or discussions or questions of me regarding those executive sessions?
I also have a question, Dean, just related to the city manager search. Will we be coming up with confirming yet this week the dates that the 2 finalists will be coming to Durango?
Good question. Yes. And as far as I know, I just checked prior to this meeting with our consultant, and the directive yesterday was to establish those specific dates. We made arrangements for their visitation in terms of reimbursement of expenses and so forth, and asked that they give us dates hopefully next week at the latest, and that they would be coming next week. So that's what I can tell you. And I have heard nothing from Slavin on that as of this.
And I would also note that next week, Tuesday, we have our board commission applicant review prior to the city council meeting or to the study session meeting. So are you calling for this executive session after the study session?
Well, I did that before I understood the the interview process was also going to take place. So yeah, it's a huge burden. I'm open for another date. I'm reminded that Councillor Youssef is not going to be back until this weekend, I believe, which was the problem of scheduling either of these executive sessions for this week, which I would have much preferred. If we can defer till next week, if Tuesday is not the day, I'm open for any other dates.
Oh, and I had a question too, Dean. So, because I'm guessing that you're handling this system of how we're setting up and when we're setting up the interviews with the finalists for our public and the economic groups and whoever else we're setting up. So do we have some idea about how we're doing that and when we're doing that?
Yes, but that's not an executive session. So
no, I understand, but neither is when there's finalists are coming to visit. So I just wanted
right.
to
That's why I'd like to keep it on the topic of when are we going to schedule these executive sessions, and
then we'll come back to that question.
So
the question is, do people want to have multiple hours? It looks like it's 2 hours of board commission review of applicants. And then it looks like it's a 2 to 3 hour study session. And so then we would go into executive session after that.
Would it be possible to have that executive session on Monday?
I would be amenable to
or
that.
Wednesday.
I think earlier the better, probably.
I agree with that. A Monday might be the better for ranking for certain. I think the issue of the finance director issue is not as critical as getting together regarding the city manager search. But neither of them are going to hold up anything, that's for sure at this point. The candidates will either be here or not next week, both the lead candidates. So.
Do you have confirmation of when Melissa can attend?
No, but I think Monday or Wednesday's got to be an option for her.
So perhaps if you can get confirmation of when she can attend, then we can just send out a scheduling email.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that and deal with Dirk on getting this thing scheduled and get your confirmation of the dates, and then work with Dirk on publication of those dates. So if that's great, we can move on to. I just want to get your concurrence that you do want to that you feel that executive sessions are appropriate. So with that determination, what I can say about the actual interviews with stakeholders, based on their timing for visitation next week, I would like to find out, number one, my conversation with Dave with Slavens was, what if they end up being here at the same time? I said that would be great. You know, certainly these are, they're not enemies. They can talk to some of the same stakeholders at the same time, and we would set those up. We anticipate taking them to facilities, the rec center, the library, sewer treatment plant, et cetera, the normal tour of our community, as well as parks and recreation amenities with the candidates. Their families can be looking at the community, and then we would set up as many of those stakeholder Zoom conferences as possible while they're here. And if there's one or two people that we can meet on the street, if you will, we'd set those up as well. So it's really a function of when are they coming? Are they both going to be here at the same time to coordinate those stakeholders in sequence or in tandem together? And so hopefully tomorrow, Slavin will have all that information compiled and commitments from both candidates to make their travel plans to be here next week.
So go ahead, please.
Suggest though that we also need to consider the general public, and apparently possibly a Zoom situation for that. So I'm just wondering if the logistics are being worked out as to how to do that, or if it would be like in the concert hall at FLC so that people can be socially distanced, although I'm not certain that's a good idea. But I was just wondering if the logistics of that with the public have been worked on. I think the stakeholder groups are easier because there's less people involved, and a Zoom meeting could easily happen with them, and the candidates don't actually have to be here for that Zoom meeting, nor do they have to be here for a public Zoom meeting. But I was just wondering if the
stakeholder and the public meet and greet are unfortunately going, well, the stakeholders, if it's convenient and minimal in exposure, can happen face to face, but the public is without question going to be necessarily a Zoom meeting. And that will be scheduled.
Are the logistics being worked on for that?
We have ability, just a date is all we need to create the logistics for a large scale Zoom meeting to have questions, and there's no dates set for that yet. We still have ranking to do and perhaps another finalist or two to add to the mix. And so I think once we're completed with that aspect, then we will engage the entire community. But yes, the logistics are, I mean, we tell Mitchell to set a date and organize it.
So could I suggest maybe that we, because I went through their emails of when they were available. And so Tuesdays would be really tough for all of us because we already have a full day of schedules. So perhaps we would come back and say, we have time Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, provided all of us, all 5 of the council can make those days available and offer them, and then we can move that, because we still need to give the different, like we talked about having an economic development group, we would need to give them enough notice to actually put it onto their calendar. So if I'm hearing you correctly, we've got about 4 days next week. And again, we don't all have to be at the same time, but we do need to get those scheduled.
Correct. And so the first thing is a commitment by the applicant to be here. And then in my mind, and that's what I was waiting for, and hopefully it won't be any later than tomorrow, Wednesday, to schedule, as you say. Tuesday is sort of out of our capability or availability. So it's really a Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, anticipating that nobody's going to be here on Monday, but that's not a known quantity at this point either. If that's the case, then we've got a little bit of hurry up but the primary purpose of their visitation is just to visit the community. And if that can't happen, if we can't get our stakeholders available for Monday or Wednesday or Thursday or Friday, we will we'll set up those meetings for a later date with each of the stakeholders, or with each of the designated stakeholders. I don't see it as a big problem at this point, but it starts with when are they going to be here, and then we can schedule those stakeholder meetings later.
Yeah, I'm not certain that their physical presence here is required, because if we're talking Zoom meetings, then it doesn't require them to be here to do that. So I'm not certain why we're hesitating setting up those meetings.
Well, because their visitation has to do with as to whether or not they are interested in us. It's a two-way street. So based on their visitation,
my understanding is that they have both confirmed that they will be here. They just don't know exactly when yet. I don't think that has anything to do with whether or not we set up the Zoom stakeholder meetings.
I disagree, but that's okay. And we have no problem establishing those times. Obviously, if it's a Zoom conference, it's not really convenient while they're here to be in a position where they can Zoom and interact with our stakeholders while they're also trying to visit our community, unless it's a face-to-face circumstance. So, all right. So I anticipate that we will hear from Slavin tomorrow, and we can put a lot of this into perspective, and we'll look at when I'll try to make contact with Councilor Youssef to see if she can give us her availability, confirm her availability for Monday or Wednesday next week for executive sessions.
And I will just add that for me, Wednesday is better for me for next week, but you know, I can work to move some things around.
Me as well, Barbara. I think that sounds logical. It's going to take some stamina to get ready for Tuesday, that's for sure, and research for our candidates for boards and commissions. So with that, I'm done with my reports and actions. Can we, any other councilors wish to add to that, either council reports or actions?
I'm going to pass. It's almost 10, so I'll let you guys talk.
I had a question. I had understood that possibly Dean and Melissa and Chris had confirmed our retreat date of August 28th, and I just wanted to confirm that there was a commitment there from the 3 city councilors for that date so that I could make some adjustments to my own calendar to fit that in. So I was wondering, Chris, does that work for you? You're committed to that date?
Just like the rest of you, I confirmed back with Karen.
So you're committed to that date?
I am committed. I responded just like you did. Thank you.
I have not responded yet because I wanted to make sure that we were committed before I changed my calendar. So
yes.
What I heard from Karen Pease, who's in charge of this, is that 4 councilors had confirmed that August 28th, and we're still waiting to hear from 1 councilor. So
no, I confirmed that once we had it. Again, I'm also moving some things around, but I confirmed in writing to her earlier today sometime. I don't remember when, but it was early. So I will.
So that's our current status, and I'll just let you confirm and deal with Karen through Karen Pease and not make this a public discussion. So
no, thank you. I just wanted to confirm it to understand it. So thank you.
That was confirmed in an email to you from Karen Pease today. So we'll just expect your reaction.
Oh, my apologies. I thought you hadn't gotten my confirmation. Sorry.
We have got. I said 4 councilors have committed to August 28th. And 1 councilor has not. So with the 5th one, we will, if that's a concurrence, then we will have a retreat on the 28th of August. And we can all change our schedules to conform to that. So thank you. Any other comments before we close this meeting of City Council on July 21st?
I have attended my policy group that I'm working with as part of the COVID task recovery group. And one of the things that we have been working on is kind of interesting because our group has not been as active in the beginning because we don't have like how to get restaurants open or specific things to work on. And a lot of our forward movement was determined and based upon what other task force groups did prior to our taking on some jobs. So what our focus is how to create economic diversity, resiliency, sustainability, and development in the future. And we have set up one program that we're going to be working on, which will be brought to City Council on August 11th. And it's a remote worker attraction program to bring people into our community who work remotely. And so that'll be a very interesting program, how we might entice them to come. And so that would help with our economic recovery. The county is also focusing on several different, Mike Segrest is also in this policy group, on several different areas that we will be discussing in the future to see how we might take them on. One is the development of La Posta Road. Another one is bringing broadband in. And interestingly enough, Elon Musk has announced that he is doing a program called Starlink, which is a satellite-based internet service that he hopes he has 500 satellites up now and hopes over the next several months to bring internet service to the northern hemisphere of the planet and then eventually the world. So that would be a really good synergistic connection in case there are areas where broadband just isn't as functional. The other area that they're looking at is revitalizing the Regional Housing Authority, and also developing the Pepsi site into a public-private partnership in the Bodo Park area. So these are all really exciting things that we could all be working on together. And I would like to suggest that in our retreat, that one of the things that we talk about is what types of direction do we want to give to this particular policy group to focus on for this economic development conversation. And that also plays into what vision we want to give to the URA that we discussed earlier today for them to also focus on. So, thank you.
And I have a report, unless you're going to make a comment on Councilor Baxter's suggestion, but otherwise I have a very quick update.
Oh, go ahead, Barbara. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, thank you. So I attended the Multimodal Advisory Board meeting right after our study session last week, and it was. I don't think that the full, the concurrent nature of what they put forward as a recommendation with regard to the communal crossing was fully conveyed, and I know they'll be preparing a memo to the board conveying that, but pretty much the motion that was put forward, prior to, in preparation for the study session, was that they moved to pursue a variance for an at-grade crossing at 12th Street, and in the meantime, to look at option 3 and 4 of the proposed options and consider whether an at-grade crossing would be sufficient or better choice. They're going to be rewording it, but as part of the issue with doing the work in the meantime concurrently was, while we're working on the variance, can staff also be pursuing some of the utility issues and other things that may influence the decision. So that memo should be coming to you. I don't know that it was as accurately conveyed. I also believe there'll be an additional discussion around speed limits and what the multimodal board, how they might want to speak to that passionately. The other meeting that I attended was the listening session for the Community Relations Commission, and it was really helpful to hear people tell their stories of experiences in this community. And it was also really helpful, and I conveyed this in an email to council, that many people who talked about how they, wanted to share their some of their experiences also shared an appreciation for our law enforcement. So I think it's really important to not always see that as antagonistic, but I took away a real sense of ways we can be working together and for all of the benefit of the community. So those sessions were very informative for me, and I think it's worth the community listening in.
And Barbara, there's going to be another one. Do you remember the date specifically on that one? We'll announce it.
I don't have it immediately on my calendar, but I do know that the commission meeting tomorrow is, I believe, at 4:00.
Yeah, and a number of us did participate in that, and it was really interesting and covered it's not a broad a section of our community as I had hoped, but there was a number of people got to speak. So with that, I might end and thank you, Kim Baxter, as well, for your comments about the economic recovery. And I might leave you, counselors, with I am about to finish a draft of the letter from council regarding the Toatin sign, the cheap sign, and I will distribute that tomorrow and solicit your opinions and thoughts and or concurrence so that we can distribute that as a unified statement from council tomorrow, if possible.
Thank you.
All righty. Well, with that, I think our business is finished at this 10 o'clock hour. We're just a couple minutes over. It's early, and enjoy the rest of your evening. With that, I adjourn this meeting of Durango City Council for July 21st.